Welcome to episode 44 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine.
And Kristen, where we believe there is nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for a virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So I hope you had a good Christmas.
Yes, I did. And I'm home now. Yay!
Yay! You made it back on that 8.5 to 9 hour drive.
Yeah.
And I hope all the listeners also had a good holiday, whatever you celebrate, or maybe you're still celebrating. Whatever it is, I hope it's been good. So because today is the 30th, so that means tomorrow is New Year's Eve, we thought we'd just talk about New Year's Eve, like things that we do, things that we don't do. If we do resolutions and all that good stuff. So, what's New Year's like for you?
Yeah, so I guess the last few years have been a bit different for everybody than the norm. But I find that I probably used to party more before, but then in the last, not even just COVID times, but since I got older, I guess, stopped partying as much. We normally just have a calm night with food and drinks and hang out. But which I think is our plan this year. There's not much on the go that I know of, unless Jeff comes up tomorrow and decides we're doing something different, which is always a possibility. But generally, we just stay home and just eat and drink and be merry. But I don't really do resolutions. I'll sometimes do a dry January or something, but I think that that's more a response to all of the food and alcohol of Christmas week. It's not necessarily a resolution. So I definitely will probably do that this year. Might have a drink on January 1st because we generally do a polar bear dip on January 1st in the ocean, and then have some champagne or something. So might do that again this year. But yeah, that's pretty much my New Year's. They're pretty low key now.
Yeah, I'm obviously very much the same. I remember we used to go all out for New Year's, and you'd go out and buy a new dress, and you'd have to have tickets to somewhere, and you'd have a New Year's Eve party. But then again, as you get older, and I had children, so now they are very low key. Usually I spend it with my family again. We obviously can't get enough of each other. So we normally hang out at somebody's house, and we'll have some appetizers, and we'll put off some fireworks early so that my kids can see the fireworks and then still go to bed at a decent hour. I think my kids are not old enough yet where staying up to midnight is a thing that they want to do or care to do or are able to do. So we normally try and make it an early night and then bring the kids home. Sometimes we'll hang out with friends at friends' houses instead, with the kids. But again, then it's early night. A lot of times I also end up falling asleep before midnight. So I will say I'm not crazy about New Year's. Even when we were in our early 20s and late teens, and everyone had to have something to do for New Year's, and it was one of those things where you got dressed up and it was this big event. Even when I did all those things, it was mostly just because all my friends wanted to do something. If I had it my way, I don't know. It's not one of those things where I'm oh my God, we have to have something to do for New Year's. I would just be content to also stay home and do nothing. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not one of those events for me that's a big deal.
Yeah. I find it, like, especially when you are of drinking age or drinking in general, like it's impossible to get a cab. You need to have rides everywhere or a driver, a designated driver. So it's just like, it is one of those holidays that's just like so much easier if you stay at home.
Yeah. I do remember, though, my absolute favorite one that I've ever done was I can't remember if it was the first New Year's that myself and my husband were together or the second one. It might have been the second one, actually. And us and like 40 of our friends, 40 of our closest friends. But like it was like an extended friend group.
Yeah.
So we all rented a hall and
nice.
we bought like did a potluck. And somebody brought like their, I don't know if it was their iPad or iPod at the time, or that's how long ago it was, but like it was
iPod Shuffle, iPod Touch, like
somebody brought a shit ton of music and like music equipment, and we essentially had like a private dance and dinner, like a potluck dinner and dance to ourselves, and it was awesome. It was really fun. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But now they're way more low key. And the resolution thing, I'm not on it at all.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope. I don't know why. I just like, I don't feel like, I feel like if you're going to change, you're going to do it. Like in my mind, you don't need to start a new year to make changes to your life. If you're going to make changes, just make changes.
Yeah.
So
I get that. I do think it's like, it's an easy time for people to get back into working out and back into eating better just because of the shit show that is this week between Christmas and New Year's. Like, but I don't think that's a resolution thing. I just think that's a like how you end up feeling after eating this much cheese and drinking so much.
Yeah. Like that. I agree with you, but I also feel like that's different. Like if you normally eat, if you're normally a healthy eater, if you normally work out, then yeah, like I feel like it's okay to maybe let that slide over the holidays because, you know, like there are a lot of get-togethers. There are a lot of like people are doing a lot of things and there's a lot of going to people's houses, and it's a lot harder to be in a routine of working out or eating right when you're doing so many things and visiting so many people and having people at your house and going to all these events. So like, I get in that way, like, okay, once New Year's is over, yes, I'll get back into my routine of eating well and exercising and stuff. But again, I agree with you. That's not to me a resolution.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I just think that like that does get lumped in with resolutions. And I don't really think it's the same thing either.
No.
Like, it's not like I've never worked out. I just like fell off a bit during December because it's a shit show of a month.
Yeah, it's so busy too. There's like, we were doing 2 and 3 3 things during the week, every week in the month of December. It's wild.
Yeah. I can't believe that fucking Christmas is over, to be honest. It's like insane that it's almost 2023, which
I know. But I will say, though, that, like, as much as I love Christmas, and I said last week that I love Christmas a lot, I do. But I also love the right now, like, the lull in between. Because, like, I'm still off work. I don't go back for another 8 days, which is nice. And, like, I've got nothing to do. The kids have nothing to do. My husband has nothing to do. And we can all just, like, laze around the house for a week.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I enjoy that.
Yeah, I do too. I'm technically for my job, I guess, on call this week because I took off before Christmas when I was in my partner's hometown. I took off some time then. So now that it's after Christmas, I'm like, nobody's really doing anything these 3 days that I have been on call. So it's just like, make sure I have my phone on in case a boat hits a wharf. Literally, there's like, so it's not, there's not, and then even then, I don't even know what I'd call my boss and be like, sorry, I know you're not working, but this is an emergency. So like, but yeah. So I'm technically working, but I'm not really. It's like a low key time.
Yeah. Which I love. I just love the low key. I love having my days to do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just feel like it's a time where I don't feel, it's so bad to say, but I don't feel guilty about sitting on the couch and reading all day, 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I did that on a weekend, I'd be like, oh my God, I didn't do anything this weekend. But just this week is such a good time for that. And I don't feel guilty for doing it because I'm like, this is what it's for. So
yeah, for sure. I know.
Yeah.
And like, I like it too because I had to clean my house really good for when all my family came over.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in that sweet spot of my house is clean, so I don't have to worry about cleaning it. But there's also nobody here, so it's nice. I don't know. It's glorious.
I get
it's
that.
a glorious time. And at the same time, it's different. It feels different than summer because over the summer, I feel like I have to do things to justify the fact that I'm off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I have to like deep clean or like declutter or like do some house renos or something. Like I just feel like I have to justify it. But
yeah,
now because it's this time of year, I only have a week and a half, really. So I don't feel like I have to get so deep into like, I don't know. I just feel like I don't have to justify doing nothing.
Yeah.
I can just do nothing. Agree. Anyway, but yeah.
Great time of year.
It is a lovely time of year. So this is just a heads up. We are not a spoiler-free zone, and things are definitely getting saucy this episode.
Ooh.
So this week we are, it's week 5. So it's our last week talking, the Court of Mist and Fury. I'm so upset about it. I just like, I just wish we could extend December, but I know that that's not possible. But I'm so sad that we're finishing up this book. But we are discussing this week chapters 52 to 69. So, this is got the infamous chapter 55. For those of you that have read the book, you understand what I'm talking about. For those of you that are reading along for the first time, chapter 55 is the infamous chapter. It is like all you have to do is say the number 55 and all fans of this book are like, oh yeah, like it's infamous. And it's so I'm really excited to get to talk about it. So I guess last week we ended with a tough revelation for Feyre. Rhys was captured. She went through hell and back to save him. And in order to do that, she had to catch a Suriel and ask the Suriel some questions. And those questions led her to the revelation that her and Rhys are mates. Ooh. And she was real pissed about it. So she saves him, takes him back to the Illyrian campground, village place, and makes Moore take her somewhere private where she can be alone to dissect her thoughts. Moore takes her to this cabin, and Feyre says, please don't tell anybody that I'm here. And Moore's like, yeah, okay, and leaves. So this week we are getting into Feyre sort of being alone and finally coming to terms with her thoughts and with what has happened to her in the past couple of days, and like sorting through these feelings of Rhys is my mate when she sort of felt like a traitorous piece of trash this whole time, being attracted to him so soon after leaving Tamlin. And I feel like if she had known this beforehand, maybe she wouldn't have felt so guilty about it. And actually, maybe them getting together could have happened sooner.
Yeah.
Um, so starting off, Feyre gets a bath in this like enchanted cabin that does everything for you. Thinking about what happened today. Um, and she knows that she went out of her mind because Rhys had been hurt. And she said it felt like this like primal need to protect him. So like there's your first sort of hint of, maybe it's something more serious than me just being attracted to him. Like she literally went crazy and said that she imploded, like detonated, sorry, is what she said. That's what she said about herself.
Yeah. And even like reading about it, you're like, she murdered many people. Like, it just seems kind of crazy for someone who didn't really murder many people before now and felt so bad about the ones that she did murder.
Yeah.
And then she just gave zero fucks and went for it.
Yeah. The only thing I will say, so like I've sort of been hard on Feyre for sort of being a jackass and like about this, and I've sort of been more on the I see why Rhys kept it a secret. But I sort of see where she comes from because she starts to talk about how, or not talk about, but think about, um, she's like second guessing why he did everything that he did. Like, was it out of the goodness of his heart? Was he just being a nice person? Or was he doing it because she's his mate? And so, like, why did he save her from the wedding? Is it because she called out for help, or is it because he just could not bear the thought of her marrying someone else?
Yeah.
Like, I get that.
Yeah.
I do think that everything we know of him, like, I do think that he was just being a good person. Like, he heard her call for help, so he saved her.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally see why she would think that, like, maybe it was just a last minute, I can't bear to have my mate marry someone.
Yeah.
And, like, we don't even know. Is there such a thing as divorce in this realm? Like, if she married Tamlin and it didn't work out, is she allowed to get a divorce?
Well, like, I have to imagine that if she married Tamlin, it seems weird that marriage is a thing, but I guess mates are rare.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of has to be. But I'm like, if you married somebody and then 100 years down the road found your mate,
Oh, yeah.
there has to be something for that. Like, if you'd never met them before because you never left your court or something.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Anyway, so she also feels this sort of like, in addition to like second guessing all of his sort of his actions, she's also feeling this relief because she knows that Rhys being her mate means that her and Tamlin would have never worked. Which
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily agree with. Like, I agree that her and Tamlin would never have worked, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's because she found her mate.
No.
I think it's
Because,
just,
like we said,
yeah.
you can not find your mate for years. So, like, it doesn't make sense to be like, oh, I have a mate. So, nope. Because, like, Tamlin probably has a mate out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Fae feel differently than humans, or like, I know a lot of people believe in soulmates as well, which I'm not really against it or anything. I just believe that you can love many people if you have like personalities that work together and attraction.
Yeah.
Then it can work.
Yeah. So I feel like her and Tamlin would not have worked out, but it's not because she has a mate. It's just because they were not compatible people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only thing she does say is that her finding her mate is sort of the best excuse that saves them from gossip and embarrassment, which is true. Like, they've said it before that finding a mate would be like the only acceptable reason to separate. So, like, she went through all of that shit under the mountain for Tamlin because she loved him.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I guess she was probably feeling also a little bit like, oh my God, I did all that. And then like 2 months later, I'm ditching him but he's been an asshole. So like, you know, everybody's going to talk because she's the savior and save Tamlin for love, only for them to not be together after. It's sort of like one of those scandalous things. So her finding a mate is sort of the best way for them to be like, oh, okay, fine, we get it.
Yeah.
She's also been thinking that she's a lying, traitorous piece of trash, which we already said. But she says that knowing Rhys is her mate means that she's not. It's actually chemistry. So, you know, I see her, like, I totally see where she's coming from, but I also see where Rhys was coming from when he didn't tell her.
Yes. And I think that's, like, the beauty of the story in a lot of the way that I find SJM writes is that, like, nobody is completely right or wrong. And I love that because it's more realistic than anything else.
Yeah. She sort of starts to think that she understands why he didn't tell her. And she gets into bed that night and thinks that the bed is cold and lonely, considering last night they actually slept together in a bed for the first time. And it's sort of like the way she's talking sort of makes it seem like, oh, she probably wants him to come and find her. But I sort of feel like it would be better for her to go find him. Like, I feel like he's always the one making the gestures.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like if she wants him there, then she should, like, write him one of those, like, text note things and say, here's where I am, like, please come. You know what I mean? Just to, like, she's the one who left him to get space. So I feel like it would have been a better gesture for her to have gone to him and say, I'm done with my space. Like, I'm ready to talk, sort of a thing.
That makes sense completely. I just, like, obviously that's not what happens, which is also sad, but yeah.
Then, so the next morning she wakes up and she realizes that she ran away from him yesterday, exactly how Rhys predicted she would run away. And it's especially bad considering she literally told him that she does not walk away, not from you. And then she literally walks away. Ugh.
That is the worst. I don't even care about anything else. That is the worst thing. Like, don't fucking say it.
If you don't mean it.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, it's completely terrible thing for her to have done. Oh, like, oh, I don't walk away from you. Oh, yes, I do. Sorry.
No,
bye.
I fucking run.
But she's now starting to realize that she probably shouldn't have walked away. Like, it was probably the mistake. And sort of like you said, like, you are sort of more of an advocate for her to have walked away to get space to, like, clear her mind and consider everything. I'm more of the opinion of, well, I mean, she didn't have to, like, winnow to a secluded place and not let Moore tell him where you're going. Like, she could have, like, gotten to the house and, like, gone up to a room and closed the door to be by herself instead of, like, leaving him in the mud on the ground.
I will agree with that too. Like, I think the way she did it was shitty, but I also think that if I was in that situation, I probably would do the same thing. So I don't think I can say much.
She's in this secluded cabin. Obviously they have no TV. She gets bored, like, by herself in this cabin. So she picks and pokes and notices that, like, it's a very comfortable cabin. Like, it's not one of these, like, pristine places that is untouched. Like, it's comfortable, it's worn, and it's like a family. And she says it's like the one she always wanted, instead of being like a symbol and a puppet, which is exactly what she was in Tamlin's court. She was the symbol of peace and this symbol of, love prevailing over all, and a symbol of, realistically, the good graces of the High Lords who turned this human into a High Fae after her sacrifice. So it's sort of like she was this symbol, and then, you know, she had to do what Ianthe always told her to do, and do what Tamlin told her to do. She could never just be her own person. And now with Rhys and the inner circle, she's actually her own person, and like she's a valued member of their family. So I don't know, like it's way better for her to be to this like family dynamic as opposed to what she was in Tamlin's court.
Yeah.
So she's looking through like all these closets and drawers and everything, and she finally finds cans of paint. And for the first time since before Under the Mountain, she picks up a brush and starts to paint. So she paints all night and into the next day, and almost all night again when Mor finally shows up at the cabin to check on her. So she's been up at the cabin for like 2 nights, 3 days. And when Mor shows up, Feyre had painted almost all the surfaces of the cabin. So like painting on the walls and on the door frames, and like just little tiny things everywhere. Like she didn't do big gigantic like mural pieces. It was just little tiny touches here and there, like the way she did in her cabin with her sisters, and how she painted those little things on the drawers. Like I'm getting the same vibe, right?
Smart. That I didn't connect the two, but yeah, that's a really smart realization, because I was more like, what the fuck is she doing? This isn't her house. Like, what if afterwards she was like, no, I don't want him, and just like had painted their entire cabin? Like, you know.
Oh my god, that would have been really funny. So she had painted all these little like pieces of the inner circle. So she painted Illyrian wings above the fireplace. She painted like Mor's flowing hair around the window frame. She painted Amren's eyes above a door frame. And Mor sort of sees all this and really likes it. But again, like luckily she likes it. Like, because what if she came in and was like, what the fuck did you do? Like you ruined the aesthetic. You know? Like that's, I just find it very presumptuous to just paint someone else's house.
I agree.
Like I get mad at my mother-in-law when she like rearranges furniture.
Yeah, and you can
if someone
change that.
Yeah, I could change that back. But can you imagine like painting someone's house without asking first?
No,
sort of.
I cannot.
Anyway, so Mor says to her, like, paint Mor's eyes up there so that they can both watch, her and Amren can like watch over the boys when they come up for their annual getaway. So we learn another little tidbit here that Rhys and Cassian and Azriel come up to this cabin every year as like a little getaway. And it's just the 3 dudes, and Mor doesn't know what they're doing up here, but it doesn't matter. So now they always want to be watching them. I guess Feyre sort of starts to small talk and asks about her Mor's trip to the Court of Nightmares. She says that she broke a couple of more bones in her father's hand. Oh, too bad. Like,
so sad.
Yeah. So that was fun for her. And Feyre sort of asks, like, if you hate your dad, why is he still alive? Like, is Rhys like not letting you kill him? Like, is Rhys want him still alive? And she said, like, no, Rhys gave me permission to kill him, like, when he took over. Like, that was one of the first things he did. But she keeps them alive so that they know. She's like, they know that I keep them alive. Like, it's sort of like them being alive knowing that any day she has the authority to kill us. And it's sort of like a, you know what I mean? Like a, I don't know how to explain it.
It's worse than, well, I don't know if it's worse than being killed, but there's always that fear of, yeah.
So Feyre sort of asked about Mor and Asriel because Feyre has sort of seen this, like, she sees this, like, love shining out of Asriel's eyes for Mor, and, like, sort of sees how he is with her, and she sort of knows that he's in love with her. I'm not convinced.
No, there's so much to this that I almost think we need to wait for the next book to talk about, but there's like, I don't know, there's so many layers to this relationship, and I wonder if the plans changed partway through
Oh
by
yeah.
SJM is the other thing.
Oh
But
yeah.
I don't know. Like there's just so much to this dynamic.
Yeah. So they're talking about it, and Mor says she finds it funny because she says that even if she was interested in Asriel, and she says she's not, but even if she was, like, she's also not convinced that he has a thing for her. Like,
Mhm.
she sees it. Apparently, Rhys sees something, and maybe Cassian sort of sees something too, but like Mor doesn't see it. And she says that if she was interested in Asriel, he still wouldn't make a move on her because he doesn't see himself as worthy because he's a bastard born son, like a bastard
Mhm.
born Illyrian. Which is, like, obviously very sad to think about, like, the fact that this is where he is in his life, is that he's however many hundreds of years old and he still doesn't think he's good enough for
Yeah.
a highborn fae. But at the same time, like, if she was interested in him, why would he have to make a move? Why couldn't she?
Yeah. But I think it comes down to that she's not interested.
No.
I just find it kind of funny that like people, I guess I don't really understand mates. I know I say this all the time, but I'm like, I wouldn't, if there was a world with mates, I would obviously have lovers and shit, but
Yeah.
I don't think I would like get into a relationship with anybody. I would hold out for my mate.
Yeah, but I feel like that's like saying you'd stay a virgin until you were married. Like, I feel like it's the same. I don't know why, but I feel like that's sort of the same thing. Like, you honestly wouldn't get into a serious relationship with someone just on the off chance that in several hundred years you would might find your mate.
Yeah, I guess the issue is I don't really understand because like we get a bunch of instances of immediate mates, like
Yeah.
so I guess it would be different if I was like 30 years old and I was with somebody and I was like, oh, well, I'm not 30. I guess that's what, 130 in Faye years? I don't know. But yeah, I guess I can't really say that. But I don't know. I think I'd just travel and hope I found my mate and just have sex with random people all the time.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess next on our, like, conversation checklist between Feyre and Mor here. So Feyre asks Mor if he is okay. She doesn't even say his name. And he is. He's completely fine. He's healed up nicely. Um, so I guess, like, she's not completely heartless because she left him in the mud.
Yeah.
But I guess, that's her sort of being like, I do care, so I do want to know if he's okay. But, like, it sort of reminds me of when she couldn't say Tamlin's name. Remember, like, when she first left Tamlin, she couldn't even think his name,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of the same thing. Like, I don't like the comparison, but it is sort of similar to me.
Yeah, I get that.
Anyway, so then Mor, I guess, is leaving, getting ready to leave, and she's like, okay, I guess you're okay. And so she's gonna leave, and she tells Feyre to paint Cassian and Asriel's eyes, like, on the door frame as well, with Amren's and Mor's, so that they can all watch over Feyre while she's at the cabin. Oh,
Sweet.
I know. And then she sort of says to Feyre, like, would it really be so bad being his mate? Like, is that such a bad thing? And Feyre says, like, no, it's not so bad. And that sort of gives her answer, I guess, of whether she's going to accept the
Mhm.
mate bond. I'm surprised that she's at the point where she still is like sort of like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Like, to me, that's sort of like, really?
Yeah.
So, but it is what it is. So, the next morning, so actually I lied. Mord isn't getting ready to leave. She stays the night. And leaves early the next morning. And Feyre sort of starts imagining her life with Rhys and the inner circle and spending time at the cabin, even in the summertime, and like living in Velaris, finally getting to walk through the artist quarter and opening up her own shop that teaches people with trauma how to paint. I don't really see a huge, and at the same time, who knows, maybe art is incredibly therapeutic. I don't see a huge market for this.
Well, I guess the thing is, there was just a huge trauma there, so there's probably a lot of traumatized people, maybe is what she's thinking.
Maybe. I guess. So she's thinking that she would teach people with trauma how to paint, and then she would go home fulfilled around her friends, and Rhys especially, he would be there. And she's saying like he would give her money to open up her own shop, but she would definitely pay him back. And they would like spend their evening lying in bed next to each other, whispering about their day. And like it's this whole future that she's laid out, and she says it's the one that she wanted, like the one that she's always wanted, that she has never even been able to hope for. And so she says before now, and I guess when she was with Tamlin, it was sort of one of those things of like, what was she going to do with her immortal life now that she had it? And now thinking of this life with Rhys and with the inner circle and all her friends, she says that her life doesn't feel so listless, and like the idea of immortality doesn't seem so bad. The idea of immortality doesn't feel empty to her anymore. And I feel like that is a big problem that she probably should have looked at when she was with Tamlin. Like, if the idea of immortality felt terrible because of the person you were with, maybe not the right person for you.
Maybe. Yeah. I think she just had so much other trauma on the go that she didn't even realize that was a thing. But I get what you're saying completely.
I guess. Anyway, so she's sort of realizing this is the life she wants, and Rhys is the one she wants it with. So she's at the cabin for 5 days on her own. And there's a knock at the door, and she goes to it thinking it's more, and it's not. It's Rhys. He finally came for her. So again, like we just talked about a few minutes ago, it would have been so good if she had sort of made this gesture of, hey, I want to see you. I want to talk. Can you come to the cabin? Instead, she ignored him, waited for him to come knock on the door, like out of the blue, and Mord didn't tell him where she was. He had to winnow to, like, he was like, there are only a handful of places you could have been. So I just started going to places. So it was just like, really? You couldn't like say to Mord, hey, you can tell him where I am now, or you couldn't have like sent him a note. I just feel like waiting is for him to come to her was sort of like the damsel-y thing to do.
Yeah, I get that.
So I don't know, not a fan. But yeah, so he was cold, obviously, because it's winter. Apparently.
And this is another one of those houses that you can't just winnow into.
Although it's not actually winter. It's spring. Because Starfall is in spring.
Yes.
So it's spring, but it's hella cold.
I think they have springs like we have springs. Because they're high in the mountains.
Yeah, I guess.
So I think
I guess. So he's really cold. So he comes in, or like she lets him to come in to his own cabin. She's like, yes, come in. And she offers, she's like, I can make you some soup if you like, because she was like, that's about the only thing I know how to do. And he's like, what, you would make me soup? And she's like, yeah, dude, like, it's just soup. And he said that amongst the Fae, just coincidentally, the female offering the male, her mate, food is really significant. And that, like, the really wealthy Fae throw parties just so that the female can set, like, a plate of something in front of the male. And I'm like, of course. And she just happens to do it, like, willy-nilly without, I don't know. It's just sort of a bit, really?
Yeah, and I can't think of the reasoning for it. I'm like, why is that? Yeah. Why is that the thing? You'd think it would be like they have to sleep together.
Yeah, you would think, but anyway. So now we get, so like he's all obviously healed up. So Feyre sort of asks him for the whole story, like, tell me everything, because he's like, after he sort of tells her that this is a really like prominent, this is a really important, significant event, and like it sort of signifies that the female accepts the mate bond. She sort of says, tell me everything, tell me the whole story, and then maybe we'll see about me giving you food. Which I love. Like, I low-key love it.
Yeah.
So he goes all the way back, which, like, I sort of get, but at the same time I don't get. Like, why do we need a 500-year-old backstory? And fair warning, this is going to take ages. Like, his story is like 2 chapters long. And I abridged it, but it's still really long. So getting into Rhys' story now. So apparently he was captured by Amarantha's forces during the war, and he was held and tortured for weeks. Cassian and Azriel, as we already know, like the dad, Rhys' dad split them up, split the 3 of them up so that they weren't together. So Cassian and Azriel didn't know that he was captured, and Rhys sort of implies that if they did know, they would have worked really hard to find him and save him. But yeah, so he was like kept alive and tortured, and it wasn't a great time for him. He also witnessed the fight between Amarantha and Jurian, and his father's forces finally like rescued him at that time, and he was forced to heal at home for the end of the war. So he didn't actually fight in the very end of the war. He didn't actually help. He didn't actually help win the war per se, because he was at home healing because he'd been tortured for weeks. That also means that when they signed the treaty, he was not a part of the creation of that document. So he read the treaty, and Amarantha and the King of Hybern were not punished. Like that was in the treaty that they would not be punished for their crimes.
Yeah.
And that really infuriated him. But his father was like, just forget about it. Like, it's none of your concern. Just don't worry about it. So I guess years later, he never forgot. So Amarantha was Tamlin's father's friend. So when Rhys and his father killed Tamlin's father, Rhys was like a little bit smug. Like, oh, Amarantha's friend, like, she cared about him and now he's dead. Ha ha. Like, sort of, you're getting what you deserve, you old bitch. So then when Amarantha returned centuries later, Rhys was still super grudgy and wanted to kill her. So he made plans to do so. But Amarantha didn't even remember him. Like, she chained him and tortured him against a wall for weeks and weeks and had no recollection of who he was. And that really pissed him off even more. The fact that she did not remember who he was. So he kept his plans to kill her secret, like from everybody, even his inner circle, which is part of the problem. So he went to the party that she was holding under the mountain, and he was going to invade her mind and turn it to like a liquid smoothie. Who wouldn't want a brain smoothie, honestly? Sounds delicious, right?
Maybe not.
But when he got there, so again, he didn't bring any of his inner circle because he didn't want them to know what his plans were, which I don't really understand why. Like, why is it a big deal for them to know that he was trying to kill Amarantha? Hey guys, remember that girl that tortured me for weeks and then got off scot-free considering she had a huge hand in the war? I'd like to kill her. And like them not, I feel like they would have supported him.
Yeah, I don't get it either, because I'm like, it's not like anyone can probably break into their minds. They definitely all have training to keep themselves from like,
oh yeah
Daimati or whatever the word is. Like, they definitely all know how to do that. So it really doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So I feel like he should have told someone, but then at the same time they probably, I don't know. So obviously he was young and he couldn't have, he wasn't even that young. He was 450 years old, but I feel like it was short-sighted of him not to realize that she would have had training against his type of power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Maybe she didn't last time or something, but like, I don't know. Yeah, it wasn't very smart.
No, it was not. So, so she had training against Daimati powers, or what did we say it was?
Something like that.
Daimati, I don't know, guys. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here.
We try our best.
It's
like between Christmas and New Year's. It's not our fault.
So, he was really busy, like trying to break her wall or like to tunnel through her mind to get at it so he could turn it into the brain smoothie. And he wasn't paying attention to the drink inside of his hand, the drink in his hand. Because like, I just imagine him like staring at her while she's like up on a throne and like just staring like really intensely and like, like
constipated.
Yes. That is 100% the face I think of. I think of constipation face. Yes. He's like staring at her with his constipation face, trying to break into her mind. And obviously not working great. So obviously, because he didn't pay attention to the drink in his hand, he drank some of the drink and didn't realize it was, I'm calling it poisoned, even though I know it wasn't a poison, it was a spell. But she used a spell on everyone. So when he finally realized, oh shit, there's a spell on me, or like when he realizes he was poisoned, he quickly, and I mean quickly, like this had to have taken him like I feel like the amount of time it took for the spell to take effect would be like 2 seconds. And like he literally had, I feel like, a millisecond to think about what he was going to do and then do it. So like, good on him for being really quick. So he used the last dregs of his magic to sort of tell his friends what was going on, talked to them mind to mind. And then he threw a quick shield around Velaris and wiped everything good from the minds of the people of the Court of Nightmares who were at the party. So remember before we did say that he didn't take anybody from Velaris to the party. He took only Court of Nightmares people. And obviously they would know about Cassian, they would know about Azrael, they would know about more and Amryn. So he wiped all of that from their minds. And then when Amarantha finally held his power, she killed half of the members of the Court of Nightmares that were there, just as revenge for Rhys killing Tamlin's dad. Which I'm sort of just like, that's extreme. Like, I didn't realize that Amarantha was that had friends, really. Like, well, I figured she was just one of those power hungry whores that like wouldn't have any friends because friends equals feeling, which is bad.
Well, that is true. But I feel like she is in love with Tamlin. Like, I've heard theories that Amryn and Tamlin were mates. Amarantha, sorry. I don't know where.
Oh.
But I think that'd be very interesting if it were true.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't see that happening, though, because I don't know, I just feel like he would be a little bit less ambivalent towards her, maybe?
Yeah, but he also grew up with his parents as mates, and they weren't good for each other. And maybe he realized that he doesn't want to be with somebody like that, who is so vicious and who is so, like, against humans, even though he was kind of against them too. So I don't really know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just an interesting theory. But I do think that she was, like, unnaturally obsessed with him, even if it wasn't mates or what. I wouldn't even necessarily call it love, because I do think it was bordering on obsession.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so he sort of kept Amarantha, when I say she, I mean Amarantha, sort of kept turning her attention to Rhys. So he sort of knew what she wanted. I guess, she kept getting turned away by Tamlin, mates or not. So she needed to get it from somewhere. So Rhys, being the most attractive male that people had ever seen, so he knew what she wanted from him, and he knew that he would do whatever he needed to do to keep her from looking at his people for too long. So he slept with her, and like, as much as I hate it, it's a great strategy for him.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was a very smart plan of his to do that.
Yeah. And, like, it also gave him insight on so many things that he otherwise would obviously never see.
Yeah.
It's obviously also very traumatic and awful, but
yeah,
like, the reasons he did it and the intel that he probably got, it did make sense.
Yeah, for sure. So, so he slept with her. And he said he made it so good that she kept wanting more. Like, he said he used, like, his mind powers to, like, make it amazing for her. And I'm like, I wonder what that would be like. Like, I wonder, is he, like, using his mind magic to make her think it's better than it is? Like, I wonder in what way he's using his magic to make it good for her.
Yeah. But then also, like, if that is what he's doing, is he just doing that to Feyre later on too? Why wouldn't you just do that to everybody that you have sex with?
Well, I'm sure he probably has enough practice where he doesn't really need to.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So yeah, whenever they slept together, he imagined killing her. How could you hide? So, like, this is another thing that and I can't remember if we talked about it before. Do you think that she took their powers and had them and then could use them? Or do you think she just took it from them so that they were not powerful anymore?
That's a good question. Because some of the things that were said in the first book, it kind of seemed like she had their powers. But, like, I kind of feel like she had their powers, but she couldn't access them, maybe. Like she was just holding them in like a little crystal ball is how I kind of think about it. But like, I don't think it's really explained well.
Yeah, I'm okay. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I think she had them, but I guess could she use them is my sort of question.
Yeah, I don't think she could use them because, like, why would she need Rhys to break people's minds if she had his powers? Or, but then it could just be she didn't know how to do it and he knew how to do it and she could easily just be like, do it. So it really could go either way.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess so whenever they slept together, he imagined killing her, but he's lost hope that he would ever escape and see his friends again. Because again, he knew that everything relied on Tamlin making a human girl fall in love with him, and he did not have high hopes for that. So he said that 3 years ago, he started to have dreams. Foggy glimpses is what he said, of a fireplace, a warren of rabbits, a hay bale, woo, a hay bale, and a human hand holding a brush painting flowers on a table. Oh, wonder who that is.
Yeah.
And I just like, why 3 years ago? Do we think it's because Feyre turned 17?
Ooh, that is kind of icky.
I know.
Oh God.
But like, I don't really know what else it would be. Like, why 3 years is such an odd number. And like,
it's just kind of funny because all I can think of is like Twilight and imprinting on a baby. But like, I guess it makes like maybe the mating bond doesn't snap into place until you're an adult.
Right.
Because there's a couple later on that were separated during the war, and then when they got back together, it snapped into place, but they had been friends all growing up.
Right.
So I kind of wonder if, like, during that time apart, they became adults and then it snapped into place. So maybe it is an adult thing, but also it makes me feel icky to think about. But I also wouldn't want him to, like, have, even though they're completely platonic, like the images he's seeing and stuff.
Yes.
So like it could have been her whole life. It wouldn't have been awful if it was. It just would have been just as weird as 3 years ago, I think. I don't know.
Anyway, so obviously he's having images in Feyre's mind, and he says that he was at a particularly low point, so when he sees her painting those flowers on a table, he pushes an image back to the other brain, to the other mind, an image of the night sky and stars, because it was an image that gave him hope. And we now know that Feyre painted flowers on Elaine's table, flames for Nesta, and the night sky for hers. And so that's why she painted the night sky, because she got that image from Rhys. So they've been connected for a lot longer than she realizes. He says that he really loved those thoughts and memories because they reminded him that somewhere somebody felt safe enough to paint in the world, and that meant that there was peace somewhere, which is sort of like sad to like that. I don't know, just the fact that that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anyway, so a year ago he said he saw another dream, but it had been clear. It wasn't foggy, and he realized that the fog was the wall, and that now she was in Prythian somewhere, but he didn't know where. Mm-hmm. He sorted through all the images he kept seeing until he finally realized that she was in the Spring Court. And I guess he realized that it was around Calanmai, and he wanted to go to see if she would be at Calanmai. So he convinced Amarantha to let him go and look for like dissidents, to look for, people worrying that people like rebelling, and to check in on Tamlin and make sure that he wasn't close um to breaking the curse.
Mhm.
So when he got there, he said he could smell her, and he found her being dragged away by those 3 Fey males. And he went over and intervened, and his first words to her were, "There you are. I've been looking for you." So his first words to her were not a lie at all.
Mhm.
He actually had been looking for her for like, he oh, it's just so cute. Like,
Yeah.
he went
It just, the tying of it together too, of like he actually meant it and it was like an entire book ago, is just so, it makes me happy.
Yes, this is what I mean. Like, she is so good at laying those breadcrumbs that you don't even realize are breadcrumbs
She
until
tells
books.
you.
Yes, until books later, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so he didn't want to know who she was or her name or anything, because if anyone found out, like, he sort of already suspected that she might be his mate. Like, just the way that he reacted to her smell and the fact that he could, like, see her images in her brain and stuff like that. He sort of had a hint.
Mhm.
So he didn't want her to be tortured. So he did not want to know who she was. So after, I guess, she left, after, Lucian brought her back to the house and got mad at her, he took the 3 males that were going to take her into the woods and do God knows what with her. He took them to Amarantha and lied and told her that they were rebels so that she would torture them.
Which is brutal.
Uh,
But also, it's another one of those things where you're like, if someone actually did it in real life, you would lose your shit. But in a book, I'm like, yes, territorial, love it.
Yeah. Well, because too, like, he had said he knew he could see in their minds what they were planning on doing with her, and this was sort of
Mhm.
his way of getting retribution.
Yeah.
So, he didn't know at the time that she was with Tamlin. And the second time when he found her, I guess it was in the house. Remember, way back when she was like hiding behind the curtain and hiding behind Lucian. So
Mhm.
that was the second time he saw her, and he found them and saw that she was looking at Tamlin with love in her eyes. Again, everyone can see emotions in people's eyes.
Fuck's sake.
So he sort of held her mind to scare her and scare Tamlin, and then made him beg. And he did all of that so that Tamlin would be scared enough that he would send Feyre back to the human realm, because he knew that if Feyre broke the curse, Amarantha wouldn't stop until she was dead. And I don't
Mhm.
understand why no one else, like, if she broke the curse, why people would not just kill Amarantha. Like, why are we
Yeah.
assuming she would be alive long enough to, like, why would she be alive long enough to hunt Feyre down and kill her?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anyway.
I can't answer that.
Yeah. So, but he says he couldn't let her go without knowing her name, because I guess he was assuming if he sent her away, then he would never see her again. So he asked her name. He knew, obviously, that she lied because he could read her mind like an open book. But when he left, he says he threw his guts up because, I guess, of what he had done to his mate. Like, he knew he was being an asshole.
Mhm.
So he told Amarantha the name Claire Better, because he didn't know that it was the name of a real person. Like, Feyre gave the name of a girl from the village because it was the first name that popped into her head. He didn't realize that this was a real person's name. He thought that it was
Yeah.
just a made up name. So when Amarantha was when Amarantha was torturing Claire, he made sure to take her pain away with his power, and he just made her scream when she was supposed to. But apparently they tortured her for a week until Rhys ended it, which is wild. Like a whole week? That's a long time to torture someone.
It very much is.
I mean, at the same time, I don't really know. I'm not an expert in torture, so
what? No?
I couldn't say, but I would think a week would be a while. But
it seems like a long time.
It does. Anyway. So, when Feyre came back and made that bargain with Amarantha under the mountain, Rhys said that he had never felt such horror before, as he had to stand by and watch the adder like beat her senseless. And he said that when she finally gave Amarantha her name, he said it was an answer to a question he'd been asking for 500 years, which is just like, so cute. I love
so
it
many
so
cute things.
much. Yeah. And he said that was the night that he decided to fight. So, he talks a little bit more, and then he tells her, he said that night that he found her and Tamlin in the closet, he was so mad. And he said he was mad for a couple of reasons. He was mad that Tamlin didn't take the opportunity to get her out when he could have, the jackass. But he was also jealous, which, I mean, we can't really fault him for, considering he suspected that she was his mate, and he had to see her, like, cozying up to his sworn enemy that killed his mother.
Yeah.
So, not the greatest. So that night, I guess Amarantha noticed the jealousy that he felt. And that night, she made him service her. We all know what that means.
Yeah.
But yeah. And apparently he made it really good for her. Like always. So the day of the last trial, when Amarantha was torturing Feyre, at the end, Rhys knew that she was his mate. So he picked up the knife to try and kill Amarantha, because if Feyre died, he wanted to die with her, which is like the saddest but cutest thing on the planet.
Yeah, agreed.
And then I guess obviously he couldn't. So Amarantha snapped Feyre's neck, and he just said he held on tight to the mating bond and willed her soul to hold on, because he knew that all the High Lords were there and they could bring her back, and he would make them if he had to. So it wasn't the bargain that she was hanging on to at all. It was the mating bond with Rhys, which I think is a huge revelation for her, because she really expected this to be she expected it to have been the bargain that they made, but in fact it was their mating bond.
Yeah.
So Feyre had told the bone carver that home was waiting on the other end of the bond. I guess she just didn't realize. She was thinking the land of the living, but really it was Rhys. She felt like Rhys was home.
Yeah.
So he also said he really hated seeing Tamlin kiss her and love her, and rightfully so. I would assume that when it's your mate, you've got some feelings involved. Some real strong ones. So obviously, seeing Tamlin with her would be troubling. So that night, when he went back home, finally, for the first time, getting to go home, Mor was waiting for him, and he just broke down. And his first words to her in 50 years were, "She's my mate." Which is so sad. You don't see your cousin for 50 years, and that's your first thing you're going to say. So traumatic.
Yeah, it's such a sin.
Yeah. So he tried to stay away from her, because remember, I think it was the first 3 months he didn't call in the bargain at all. But he sort of saw through the bond that she was wasting away. And on her wedding day, he heard he says he just lost it hearing her beg for someone to save her, I mean, sorry. So he said he wanted to use the bargain just once to make sure she was okay. But he said that he hated sending her back to Tamlin, like, not just because she was his mate, but because he was in love with her. And he said he knew he was in love with her the minute he picked up the knife to kill Amarantha under the mountain. And, like, I appreciate this, but at the same time, like, how can he love her? He doesn't know her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he knows her well enough to love her yet.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Anyway, so the day that Tamlin locked Feyre up, Rhys was furious and said that if he was allowed, if he could have, he would have killed him. And Amren said that if he could get Feyre to admit that they were mates, they wouldn't have trouble from Tamlin. So I guess that was sort of the big debate that they were having after he rescued Feyre and she was living in the Night Court. Remember, we said that Azriel was, like, flying around the Spring Court to survey everything and make sure that they weren't readying to go to war or declare war on the Night Court or anything like that. And Amren was sort of like, we could solve all of our issues if you just got Feyre to say that you guys were mates, and then we wouldn't have a problem. Tamlin would have to back down. But Rhys didn't want to force anything on her. Because remember, like we've said this whole book, it's always her choice. And he also said that he didn't want everything he had done for her. He didn't want her to think that it was all to win her or to keep his land safe. But he said he couldn't stay away from her and he couldn't stop loving her. And I think that's, like, I don't know, it's cute. Like, he says he tried, but he could not stay away from her. And we sort of could tell that, like, from the get-go. You know what I mean? So then she sort of is like, you love me? And it's like, no, duh, friggin' Feyre, come on. So.
Not very smart.
No. Anyway, so then she says, then eat. So she offers him the soup. So I guess it's her accepting his story and accepting his bond.
Finally.
Yeah. But it's not even a big thing. Like, so he eats the soup and he eats every little bit of the soup. And then she says to him the best thing, even though I still have issues with it. She says, I want you to know, I took a direct quote. I want you to know I love you. And I want you to know that I am broken and healing, but every piece of my heart belongs to you. And I am honored to be your mate. And I love that. But I still feel like she took this huge leap from I want to have sex with him and keep it easy and breezy to now all of a sudden, like 5 days later, I love him.
Yeah.
And as much as I love their relationship and as much as I love them as a couple, it's a bit of a, like, really? For me?
Yeah, I get that.
But maybe she just did love him the whole time and just didn't realize it, okay? But yeah. So he has this, like, visceral reaction to her saying that and, like, shudders in relief, which I really appreciate. And she continues by saying that if she had to, she would endure every single second of everything over again to find him. And she tells him that you're mine, which is cute. I like it.
It is.
So then they start kissing. But then, so I love, this is one of the things that SJM does a lot. So, like, they start kissing softly, but then she groans, and that snaps his leash that he held on himself. And I love, I really like it, but she does it in all of her books, like, about the leash. The men are always on a leash until the woman sort of shows them something more, and then their leash snaps and they get ravenous. So he then, like, pushes her onto the table full of paint, and they end up covered in paint as they're making out. He pulls her to the table's edge and takes her pants off. She's not wearing panties. unless he took them off with the pants. We don't know.
Yeah, maybe they're tight and like the
Yeah.
pants just took them off.
Yeah. Then he hooks her legs over his shoulders and gets on his knees. And he obviously, licks her out.
Very acrobatically.
Very acrobatically, yeah.
Like, just like a pretzel behind her head. His head, but.
Yeah. And I'm hearkening back to last week when he said, I want you splayed out on the table like my own personal feast. Serendipitously, it happens.
Yeah.
So he replaces his mouth with his fingers and makes her come. And she's thinking that he'll penetrate her now. But then...
penetrate her
I know.
now.
She's thinking, she's like, oh, this is it. This is it. Like, he's gonna do it now. I really want him to. But then...
I'll get the D.
Yeah, I'll get the D. But then he just goes back to eating her out until she has a second orgasm. Whoa. She's like, okay, I'm limp now. And like, if that were me, I'd just be like, I'm done with you. I don't need, like, this is over. I'd be like, I need a break.
Yeah.
But he lifts her into the bedroom and he takes his clothes off. But he leaves the wings out. Remember before he said he had never left the wings out during sex, but he's leaving them out for her. And then he just goes right at it and pounds into her over and over and over again until she comes again from penetration. And she says she can feel and smell the bond between them. And she says it's like an unbreakable chain. And I have to say, this line is hilarious to me. He also finally comes roaring, slamming into the hilt. Yikes. So that's, slamming, that sounds a bit painful, to be honest.
Yeah.
So.
Doesn't necessarily sound great.
Yeah, but, it could be fun, I guess. So, they hang out in bed for a little bit and realize they are covered in paint. So they decide to take a bath together, and conveniently the bath is gigantic. He has paint like all over his wings. Perfect handprints of might I add. Like handprints of paint from her on his wings, which I don't understand how that would work. I just don't.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be like grab or like
or
touch.
A smudge or something, not a perfect handprint.
High five. Wing.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's cleaning his wings and she tells him that she knew that she was falling in love with him on Starfall, but she didn't want to admit it. But she says it had nothing to do with him. And sort of reassures him that she's not afraid of the consequences of being with him, because he sort of has always implied that whoever gets stuck with him is going to be stuck like being hunted all their lives because he's so powerful. So she's sort of just saying like, you're worth it. I'm not scared about anything about being with you. Like, I'm not worried for my life or anything like that. Mm-hmm. She sort of asks like, what now? And he gives her several options for having their mating. He says, well, we can have our mating verified by a priestess, have a small or a large party, or they could get married as well as just being mated. He says, really, it's our options are open. Mm-hmm. And she's sort of like, I'm really glad we have so many options where our relationship is involved, but I was talking about the human queens and Jurian. So like, it's just funny because she's like, great, I'm really glad we have options. Not at all what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I loved that scene. It was hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, so he all of a sudden gets hard again, and she wants him to take her in the tub. But, which is not sanitary, by the way. It's very easy to get an infection that way.
Yes, completely agree.
So, maybe don't do it in the tub.
And so many people do.
I know. In books. In books, yes.
I'm like, yeah. I can't say that I've never tried it, but it's never felt great.
I can safely say I feel like this is TMI, but I have not.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're not safe and you can get infections.
So people often think that because water is wet, it'll be good. But heads up to anybody that doesn't know, water isn't wet like lubrication. It's wet like stickiness almost. Like, it's not good. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
Very hard to get it in there.
So yeah. So she wants to go in the tub. He does not. He lifts her up and takes her back to the bedroom, which is all magically clean. And she starts to glow with day court sunlight. And he releases his night magic. So they're like, their magics are entwining, and she's bright and he's dark. And they're like the perfect yin and yang, and they complement each other so well.
Yeah.
So she pushes him on the bed and starts to give him a BJ to sort of be like, now it's my turn to, do you a solid. And of course she's amazing at it for him.
Yeah.
Like, how much practice has she had?
The only thing that I will say for these moments, because I get annoyed with this too, it's like the first time you're ever with somebody sexually is not the best time it's ever going to be. Maybe something with mates, like the physical chemistry between mates does make it better.
Oh, maybe.
I will give this couple that. But every other couple that's like a 5,000-year-old male and he's like, this is the best one I've ever had. I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah.
A Discovery of Witches was like that, wasn't it? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
I think maybe. Could be.
Anyway.
So yeah, he can't stand it. It's so good. So he pounces on her and he puts her on her stomach and enters her from behind. Not the bum, just
doggy style-ish.
Yes, doggy style.
On her stomach.
Yeah. So he only enters her like 3 or 4 times before she comes. And then she comes again, like in a row. It's like twice in a row, back to back, which is not realistic, but hey.
Just from penetration.
This is where we're going with it. So, he flips their positions then so that he's under her and she's riding him. And she says it's like to banish the stain of Amarantha, because that's the position that they used to be in for Amarantha. So he's trying to sort of banish that stain, which is like very healthy of him. Like, I would have expected him to be a little bit more hesitant to do that position, like, so soon after. Like, Amarantha was the last person he had sex with.
Yeah.
And, like, already he's like, yep, let's go. I'm ready to move on from that. So, anyway. So that night, she got about an hour of sleep. They did it so many times. Again, no infection to be found. They just have sex a whole bunch. The next day, they sort of talk about children. And she says she hasn't been taking, like, a tonic to prevent her from having kids. And she sort of thinks that she's expected to give him children, because with Tamlin, she was expected to give him children.
Was she trying to have Tamlin's child already, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Or did she just stop taking the tonic once she left the spring court?
I feel like it's probably it. She just hasn't been taking the tonic since the spring court. Because I feel like the spring court, it would have been one of those scandalous things where, oh, they're not married, like, they gotta be married first, right?
Yeah.
Before they try to have kids. That's what I would assume. So, anyway.
Yeah.
So Rhys sort of reassures her that she isn't expected to do anything that she doesn't want to. And he says, like, one day he would be honored if she had children with him, but she can take all the time she needs. And that makes her want to have sex again in the bath. And they do. And that's chapter 55. It's just like sex on sex on sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's glorious. So, end of the chapter. We're back to I'm not going to call it the boring stuff. We're back to like the plot line stuff. Less sex.
We're back to the story of this book.
Yeah. So they go back to the Illyrian camp after this. And Cassian teases Rhys into fighting. I guess Rhys sort of tells Feyre that like the first few weeks, a male is usually really on edge, and like if another male looks at his mate at all, then he could get really territorial and jealous for no reason. So like, and he was like, if we could, like if we had the time, I would ideally like to just stay in this cabin with you for weeks, just banging you and fucking you until like I physically cannot anymore. So I guess, but he says like, we don't have that luxury. We have to get on with saving the world. So that's why Cassian sort of teases Rhys into fighting, to sort of get rid of a lot of that extra energy and a lot of that, the edginess that he's going to have, being not able to fuck Feyre all the time.
Yeah.
So more than like welcomes Feyre into the family, which Feyre sort of really loves. She's like, yes, this is what I wanted. After the fight with Cassian, Rhys kicks more and Cassian out of the house, and then just takes Feyre over the kitchen table, which is super hot. But I'm reminded of what you said last time. People have to eat on that table.
Yeah.
People do.
Yep. Yeah, and this is like not even just his friends, which is awkward, but like they use it for Illyrian warriors. Like they had this house cleared out before they got there.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And then they winnow back to Velaris. This is something that I really don't get. Why did they even go to the Illyrian camp in the first place?
I know, because they were there, allegedly, because it was closer to the mortal lands. So I don't understand at all anything.
No, I do not either. I find this very confusing.
Yeah.
However, they go back to Velaris, and they have dinner, and the inner circle vow to protect and serve Feyre, and she's like, that's really nice, but I really want you guys to be my friends and my family first. And they're like, oh, we will, but we're also going to protect you. And then they all head to the mortal lands to show the queens the orb, except for Amren. Amren is the only one that stays home.
Yeah.
Only 2 of the queens show up this time in sort of the similar way as before. They trade insults a little bit, and the queens are like, they sort of seem bitter that Feyre is immortal. And like, even though she used to be human, they're like, well, she's just nobody. Why did she get to be immortal now? And Feyre really like hates the idea of showing the queens Velaris, but they do it anyway. And the queens are like in awe of Velaris, and like they're really impressed with it, but at the same time they're like, we'll discuss whether we should give you the book. And then they're like, we'll tell you, we'll inform you of our decision at our leisure, is what they say. And everybody, Feyre included, sort of gets pissed that they aren't just saying yes, because again, they made this huge gesture of showing them this amazing secret that like nobody knows about, and they're just sort of being like dickheads about it. And the queens sort of admit that like they're worried that Rhys broke into their minds to make them think that everything is true, even though it isn't. And then they bring up a letter that he wrote. Apparently, like when he was initially trying to get an audience with them, he wrote them a love letter pleading for Feyre's life and humans' lives, since Feyre used to be human. And they're like, oh, that was such a cute letter, but like they're sort of like teasing him about it, almost like, oh, you wrote that letter, but like, haha, psych, we're gonna do what we want to do. And Nesta then sort of like steps in, demands that they give her sister the book. She's like, you guys are being dicks. Give my sister the book. She doesn't actually say that, but she talks back to the queens, which is something that the queens don't like, obviously.
Yeah.
And obviously they don't like it, so they say, well, then no, we're not going to give you the book. And I feel like they were going to say no anyway, but this just sort of gave them the excuse.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So Nesta is like really pissed that they're leaving the area defenseless and essentially leaving the people in this area to die because they are so close to the wall. So they will be like sort of the first ones attacked.
Yeah.
So Cassian, in front of the mortal queens, vows to protect Nesta's home and people with his life. And this causes Nesta to have a tear run down her cheek. And then Cassian wipes it away with his thumb. You know, that thing that the tender thing that men do to women's tears.
I do know.
Yeah. And so after he does that, she looks away because she can't bear to look at him any longer. And he keeps staring at her. So I say, to that.
Yeah. Also, why do people keep making promises? Is what I say.
That's true.
But that's for a later discussion, I'll say.
Yeah. The queens sort of say that they'll talk to the other queens and then they'll like let them know, even though they've already said that they're gonna say no. And after the queens leave, everyone is sort of like flabbergasted that they didn't get the book. They're sort of like they really didn't see it as a possibility that they wouldn't get it. After they leave, there's like this lead box on one of the queen's chairs. It's the beautiful golden haired queen. And she was really inspired by the love letter that Rhys wrote. And so she left them the book in the lead line box. And she says, don't trust the mortal queens. And the sixth queen isn't sick. So the first meeting we had, there was 5 of the queens, and they were like, where's the 6th one? And they were like, oh, she's sick. Turns out she isn't sick, but we don't know what's up with her right now.
Yeah.
So I guess they offer Nesta and Elaine to come to Prythian with them for safety. But Elaine's like, no, because of her fiance. So,
which I can't really blame her for.
No. And obviously Nesta's not going to go if Elaine is not, right? Like if Elaine is staying, Nesta is also staying.
Yeah.
So they say no, and then Rhys says, okay, well, I'm going to plant sentries at your house, and if you ever change your mind, they'll be standing in the living room like at 6:00 every day, and if you just have to come in and say you've changed your mind. So they go back to Velaris again, and they give Amryn the book so that she can start deciphering it. Rhys and Mor go to the Court of Nightmares to return the Veritas orb, and to make sure that Kier, who is Mor's dad, has his armies ready to go. So Feyre is essentially left alone, but Cass and Az stay in the townhouse with her to sort of protect her. And one day, Cassian takes her out on the town, like to go for a walk just to get out. She's sort of like, you guys don't have to stay in the house with me. Like, if I'm fine. And they're like, and
I'm a big girl.
Yeah. And he's like, listen, if you need your space, that's fine. But like, I'll be here. And all of a sudden, as they're walking along like one of the bridges close to the river, the Sidra, they see black wings on the horizon that are not Illyrians. And they are all like the Adder. And Cassian wants Feyre to go back to the house because he knows that there's going to be a fight on their hands. But she wants to fight. So Cassian uses his siphons to make a big shield around them. but the adders eventually like shred it away. Like it does work for a little bit, but they shred it away. They drop the body of the Golden Queen that gave them the book onto the bridge. They killed her.
Well, it's so brutal the way it's done too, because like I think at first she's still alive, and then like, but her eyes are gone, and it's just so brutal.
Yeah, they tortured her for several days, I think. So Cassian sort of orders her to go home, and then he shoots into the sky to fight the legion of winged adder creatures by himself. And all of a sudden she starts to run home, and she sees Hybern soldiers dragging innocents out of their homes and killing them and laughing. So, like, are these the same creatures that have landed, or is it another legion that has snuck in?
That's a good question. Did you say earlier that, like, the adders, or did I make it up? But I just assumed that the adders were, like, carrying people, and as they got closer, dropped them on the ground.
Oh, could be. Could have been. Again, guys, this section is so long. Like, it's a really long section. We're discussing like 130 pages of plot, and it's a lot of info. So I did skip over a couple things just to like fit it in. So maybe that did happen.
Yeah.
So she sees Cassian fighting, and then Azriel joins the fight, and then she sees Amryn like at another end fighting, and they're all fighting to protect the city. And she realizes that the artist's quarter is unprotected, and she wants to protect the people in it. And she says that she sees this woman who has no powers, and she's just got like a big stick protecting a bunch of people that were cowering in her shop. She's just got a bat to like protect herself from these soldiers, and that like urges her to act and to protect them. And she uses the Sidra, which she's nearby, to create. So she uses her water magic to create water wolves, and she chokes and drowns the soldiers. And then she goes up to them and slits their throat for good measure. I mean, valid. Good point.
Yeah.
The soldiers see that she is coming, so they start to fly away so that the wolves can't get to them. So she turns the wolves into eagles and hawks, and then crashes them into the soldiers, which soaks them. Then she uses her ice magic to freeze them, so they drop and just shatter onto the streets, which is amazing. Like, she is being badass, and I love it.
Yeah.
So they all die, obviously, and then she sees the adder, like the one that tortured her. I don't know how she can tell them all apart, but like,
me neither.
I guess she can. And she sees that adder flying out of reach, and like she's trying to get him with her water animals, but it's going too fast and too far. And all of a sudden, she hears Rhys speaking to her mind, asking her where she is. And he's loudly, like, she's like, where are you? Where are you? I guess he's panicking. And she knows that no one notices the adder flying back to Hybern. So she knows that it's up to her to get him. So she grabs some ash arrows that were lying on the ground, and she winnows into the sky.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. She's being badass.
She is. So Feyre winnows to a rooftop with her arrows, and Rhys is still asking her where she is, and she like puts a shield up against him, which I kind of just think is unnecessary. I know she's focusing on the adder, but I'm like, just say, I'm alive, give me a minute.
But I guess, didn't she say that the issue was that she felt like if having him in her head would really, really like cause her to lose focus?
Yeah.
Like,
I get that. But I feel like she could just say, 1 second.
I'm busy. I'll be with you in a moment, please.
Right? I don't know. She's very one track minded right now, and I get that like when you're in that kind of mindset, you act differently too. So maybe I'll give her the benefit of the doubt for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, she uses her powers to like feel out where the adder is, and she winnows to him like in the middle of the air, which is for somebody who learned how to winnow last week, like that's
extra
some good shit. um so she becomes like she stabs the adder's wings with her poisoned arrows, which I'm like, she can't fly either, so I don't know if this is the smartest move. But she becomes a living flame while holding it, and they're basically just free falling, but she's just holding on to it so that it can't break free. And she stabs it in the heart and says that the first stab is for Rhys, and then the second stab is for Claire, and then she stabs it a third time for herself. Which, yeah, like she needs this.
Yeah.
For sure. They're really close to the ground now, and she whispers, "I'll see you in hell." And she winnows away, leaving the adder to just like splat on the pavement.
Woo!
Yeah, he is done, which I think we can all be happy about.
Yeah.
Feyre ends up a few feet away, but her legs give out on her. Obviously, that was a lot of magic used in a very little amount of time. And I guess Rhys I think he was on the other side of the Sidra, and he was fighting over there at first, but then he like comes over to her area, and there's like a wave of darkness, and all the citizens, like, they know that his magic is darkness, so they're not worried about it. But obviously any of the bad guys, I'll call them, are more worried about it. And I kind of just assume that he kills them with this blackness somehow.
Yeah.
Any that aren't already dead.
Yeah.
So then Rhys goes to Feyre, and he calls her Curse Breaker and the Defender of the Rainbow. And he holds her, and she like starts to cry, which is like obviously overwhelming situation for her at this point.
Yeah.
Later on, Rhys tells them that the wards are back in place, and it was the cauldron that originally that took them out so that the Legion could get through. So we get a bit about Amren's powers now, and Feyre kind of noticed her fighting across the Sidra, I think it was, and Rhys kind of tells her that Feyre spun fantasies into the soldiers' minds. So some thought that they were drowning, and some thought that they were like really high in the air when they weren't. So they flew to kind of get closer to the ground, and they ended up splatting as well. And then others she just tortured with their nightmares.
Okay. That sounds super fun. I'm glad we're getting an insight into somebody's powers. Not Moore's.
No, exactly. Yeah, Moore wasn't around during this, was she?
No, but like still, like everyone knows that like Moore is like the contingency in case it all gets shot to hell, and if Amren is not around. So like I wish I knew what her powers were.
Yeah, exactly. But like Amren's powers sound like she could actually fuck everybody up if she was left to it.
Yeah, which I love. I'm like here for it.
Mm-hmm.
Way to go.
Yeah,
I love that she makes the women the most badass. Like the dudes, yeah, they're powerful, but they're not as badass as the women.
Yeah, I agree. So like, I guess it's obvious, but the queens told Hybern about Velaris, and Amren says that she'll stay when everybody else goes to Hybern to kind of keep the city safe. So obviously they're going to have to go to Hybern to nullify the cauldron, and it kind of seems like she must be the only one that's strong enough to ward the city when Rhys is gone. Like no one else in the inner circle can actually do that.
Yeah.
Feyre goes to find Rhys a little later, and he's on the roof, and he's obviously upset and feels like the attack is all of his fault for trusting the queens with the secret in the first place. Which, like, I do get why he feels bad. Like, he is the ruler of this land and he did tell them, but like, he never could have really known that they would tell Hybern or that they were in league with Hybern.
No, because like, presumably Hybern just wants to kill all the humans. So like, why would he align with human queens?
Like, yeah, he wants them either as slaves or dead. Like, it doesn't really make any sense why the queens would want to be aligned with him. But clearly something's going on that we don't really know yet. Rhys also comments to Feyre about like how she shielded him completely out during the battle. And she does apologize, which I do enjoy, because I think that like if it was the other way around, she would have been upset too, that like if he had blocked her out.
Yeah.
Like, reassurance is necessary at certain points in time, like during a battle.
I know. And they are in this unique situation where they can not read each other's minds, but where they can communicate mentally. So yeah, I agree. I feel like, a quick, like, I love you, but I'm okay. And I need to do this. So I'm going to shut you out now. Like, would have been appreciated.
Yeah, I agree. He does comment that like the way she killed the adder was really dangerous. And she asks if he's going to scold her. And he says that, like, he can't scold her for fighting for his people, which I think makes sense. But, like, she's her own person and can make her own decisions. So I do enjoy that he's not there, like, berating her for making certain decisions. Like, obviously, he's the type that also makes dumb, I'm going to say, calls when he, like, puts his mind to it. Like, when he was going to kill Amarantha.
Yes.
Rhys also tells her that he doesn't deserve her, which is sad, but she says that they deserve each other. And I just love that line. And it's so sweet because like they both feel so broken apart. And then now that they're like accepting their relationship and they're together, and even before that, but they're really starting to heal each other. And I just think that it's like so important for them. And then they have sex on the rooftop under the stars. So, you know.
Why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
I mean,
good night.
But, like, think about it, too. Like, presumably, they might have company downstairs in the house. So, like, Moore and Cass and Az could be staying in the house. So, who knows?
Yeah.
The roof was probably a better option. Very
good point. Although you'd think that he'd be able to, like, soundproof stuff. Like, magic can do anything. Is my thoughts on. Yeah. So the next day we also get that like Amren, I guess, comes and tells everybody that she's figured out the book and she knows how to nullify the cauldron. She says that Feyre, because she was also made, needs to touch the cauldron and say like a certain spell and it'll be nullified. Moore asks Amren what would happen if they put the two pieces of the book together. And Amren says that they should never be put together because the blast of power could wake up things that should stay asleep. And like, I don't know what that means. And obviously this is a moment where like, it's a bit of foreshadowing because like, you're like, obviously the book's probably going to end up together. But I don't think anything like that happens. But maybe in our reread of the next book, we'll find something out that I forgot.
Yeah. Like this is just it's. Why bother mentioning it unless it's going to happen? Like obviously, if they're like, what happens if we put the book together? And they're like, don't put the book together. Then it's obviously the book is going to end up together.
Yeah. So they all kind of come up with the plan of how they're going to destroy the cauldron. And it seems very hastily put together and quickly done. But the plan is that Moore and Azriel are going to winnow everyone into Hybern since Rhys's magic can be tracked. So Rhys will have to stay on the coast and he will only come to take them away like once it's nullified, or if everything goes to hell while they're there, he'll winnow in to help. Rhys doesn't love the plan because obviously Feyre's in danger and he's not around. But he does leave it up to Feyre. he's not going to stop her, even though he does admit that he's afraid for her. But they all kind of realize like this is the best plan and the only way that they can try to do it. And Feyre kind of has her own realization of like how shitty she was treated before, that like having a choice in what she's going to do and what she's capable of is such a big deal to her.
Yeah.
Feyre's on her way to her room, and Rhys shows up and says either they're moving all of his stuff to her room or all of her stuff to his room, but they're going to be sharing a room now. He doesn't care which one, but she just needs to tell him. And this is kind of new for her, because if you remember at the beginning of this book, her and Tamlin used to keep separate rooms. So they used to fuck and I think sleep in Feyre's room most of the time, but Tamlin would also have his own space where I don't even think she was allowed in there, it kind of seemed like.
I don't know if she wasn't allowed in there or if she just never went in there. Like, yeah. I don't know if it was an allowed thing or if it was just, or if it was simply just like she just didn't go in.
Yeah, that's fair.
She had no reason to.
Yeah. Yeah. So she just says, oh, like, you don't want your own space. And he says, nope, I need you to protect me from my enemies, which I just thought was like a cute line, because obviously she is a badass now, really. They end up picking his room because his bed is bigger, and he magics her stuff in there. So when they walk in the door, all of her stuff is already there. When they're inside, he gives her his mother's ring, and it's the ring that she got from the Weaver, and he kind of tells her like the backstory behind it. So his mom gave it to the Weaver and told Rhys that if he ever found somebody he wanted to marry, she either had to be smart or strong enough to get it back, or she didn't deserve him. And Feyre tells Rhys that she kind of wants to wait until after Hybern to wear the ring, because there's so much that could happen between now and then, which I don't really understand, because what they do is more permanent than a ring. So I don't get it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So she does say that like after Hybern, she wants to do everything. She wants to have a mating party, a wedding, and he asks if she wants to take it a step further. And she just says like, I'm listening. And then the chapter ends and we're left with a cliffhanger of what that means. So we immediately just jump to the next day, and they're all getting ready to go to Hybern. So everybody's strapped up with weapons, and Feyre has like a bunch of different weapons on her. And Feyre has the 2 pieces of the book in separate pockets, and she has the spell written down. And Amren tells her that the cauldron makes the book look harmless, which is an interesting thing to say.
I feel like that's like one of those things that like you don't want to tell somebody when they're about to go on a dangerous journey. Like, oh, by the way, the thing you're about to face, real bad.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, didn't even think of that. Seems a bit dumb.
But I guess Amren reminds me of one of those practical people. Like, she'll never say... She'll never tell you a lie. Like, it's always going to be the truth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I do. And it kind of reminds me back to that moment at the end of their dinner when she was like, what's the worst that could happen? And Cassian is like, a lot, when they're talking about the bone carver or whatever he says. But it's like, nobody's really letting her go into anything blind here.
Which is good, though. Like,
yes, it is. Feyre tells Rhys that they'll all be fine, and I'm like, don't say that. That's a dumb thing to say.
Yeah.
I know, reassuring and stuff, but I'm like, oh my god, everything's gonna blow up now.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. If you say it's gonna be fine, it's obviously not gonna be fine.
Cassian and Azriel say to Rhys that they will protect her with their lives, And then Rhys looks at Moore, and Moore says that she knows her orders. We do not know her orders, so that's interesting. So Cassian is flying Feyre towards Hybern's castle, and there's nobody around, which Feyre comments on, but Cassian says that, like, the guard is changing right now, which is, like, always what people say in books and movies, like, when they're sneaking in somewhere. And I'm like, I don't understand why people haven't figured out an easier or better way to change guards than leave everything unprotected for a minute. It just doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah.
But it also reminds me of, again, a show that we love, Gallivant. In season 2, there's like a whole song and dance of changing the guards. So I just found that kind of funny.
Yeah.
Feyre can hear the book again, and it says, "Home, take me home." And, like, I think I would just turn around right there. Like,
yeah.
The book wants to be with the cauldron. Like, that is a bit sketchy. I don't even really know why they're taking the book with them.
Yeah, yeah. Like, if they have the spell written down, I feel like they should leave the book at home. Like, I feel like it's dangerous, and it's just not a good idea. I feel like they're making a lot of bad decisions here.
Yeah.
And, like, you're saying, "Take me home," and all I can think of is that song. I don't even know who sings it, but it's that country road, take me home to the place I belong. That's what I think of. And so I'm imagining the book just singing that song at Feyre and Rhys and everybody. Well, Feyre, because she's the only one that can hear it.
Yeah. No, exactly. So they all kind of meet up at a door that Azriel had, like, previously scouted on his missions, and he and Cassian go ahead and kill any of the guards that are around. Mm-hmm. And the book is kind of like leading Feyre to the cauldron. So I guess she needed it for that, but I don't know. I feel like she could have figured it out without the book.
Yeah.
Feyre also says that she doesn't mind these deaths because, like, these are the people who hurt Rhys and hurt Velaris. So she's fine if, like, Cass and Azriel kill them all, which is so bloodthirsty of her. And I feel like it's another development in her character.
But, like, I love it because it's like, I love that SJM makes all the women the badasses. Like, Feyre's, like, the bloodthirsty badass, and she doesn't apologize for it. And, like, Moore is, like, this mysterious badass. And then, I don't know. I just really appreciate that it's not the men that are the scary ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, Amryn, everyone's just terrified of. So,
yeah.
Whatever.
I love it.
Makes sense. Yeah, me too. So they get to the room with the cauldron, and it's, like, very little issue. Like, I know Cassian and Azriel are going ahead of them and killing people, but I'm also like, this seemed very easy.
It did seem very easy. Like, too easy.
Mm-hmm. And apparently the cauldron is about the size of a bathtub, and it has 3 legs. And
here's the thing I never, like, okay, so one... When they say cauldron, obviously I think witch's cauldron. I never,
of course,
like,
yes,
I never thought bathtub. But 2, how does a bathtub sit on 3 legs? Where are all the legs?
I don't know. Are they, like, just in a row?
But that's what that would be very unsteady and uneven. It would be, like, wobbly. But, like, 3 legs would be just as bad. A bathtub needs 4 legs. A cauldron, a big round one, needs 3 legs.
But maybe it's just, like, a round circle, and not the circumference, the diameter is the size of a bathtub. So it is a cauldron, but it's even bigger than we've ever imagined.
Oh, you just think it's a really big-ass cauldron. Not a bath. Yes. Not an oval bathtub.
No. It's like a jacuzzi with 3 legs.
Well, I guess.
I don't know. But neither of this is what I pictured in the beginning. I obviously pictured a witch's cauldron.
Yeah.
Like, stirring up. Feyre also calls it hideous but alluring, which is just, like...
sexy.
Yes. And they can apparently hear a heartbeat coming from the cauldron, which is like... that seems a bit sketch. Feyre Feyre goes up to the cauldron and she gets the spell out. And the cauldron and the book both start kind of talking to her. And like, I will say some of this section is like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I've perfectly captured everything that has happened here, but this is what I got from reading it. But it kind of seems like the cauldron and the book both start talking to her.
Yeah.
And the book calls her Princess of Carrion, which is interesting. And I don't know why. But
I don't know.
Feyre, yeah, like I don't understand what that's in a reference to, or if it's something in the future.
Yeah, like I'm wondering, do you think it could have something to do with how bloodthirsty she is?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. Feyre kind of feels like she is outside of her body and like watching this moment happen. And she feels like she's kind of like a conduit between the book and the cauldron. And the book is asking her to be joined and to be free. And Feyre's like, Amren was wrong. The book shouldn't be kept separate. It doesn't have the power to nullify the cauldron unless it's put together. Yeah, so maybe she did need the book for the cauldron. As a going back to our earlier question. So Feyre starts to try to put the book's pieces together, and more lunges for her as she realizes what's happening, but it's too late, and Feyre puts the pieces together. And Feyre's kind of still stuck inside of her head, and she's not able to say the spell or move, which sounds terrifying.
Yep, yikes.
For one. And I guess she's jolted back to her body when Asriel grabs her. And they hear someone, and Az shoves Feyre behind him, and her nose is bleeding, she noticed. So, like, there's clearly, she just went through a lot more than we thought. But also, she didn't nullify the cauldron. A handsome brown-haired male comes downstairs, and he's human. And she, which I don't love this part, she recognizes his eye.
Ugh.
Yeah. Because it's Jurian.
Ugh.
And, like, gross. But Jurian calls her a stupid fool, which, like, he's probably not wrong. But still, I think she already knows that at this point. But, like, obviously, like, this is the point where everything has gone to a shit show. So Rhys can just come in because there's, like, it doesn't matter if anyone tracks his powers because everybody already knows they're there.
But, like, how? Like, I understand. So she put the book together, and, like, did it set off like did it set out a ripple like Amren thought it would?
So I just thought that the king was letting them get in. Like, I thought he knew all along that they were there, and he was just like, I'll let you guys in, and then I'll shut the door.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I assumed, but I guess it could really be either. I don't really know what is happening. But the king is very prepared if he didn't realize they were coming.
Yes.
So Rhys shows up then, and he takes the book from Feyre and just, like, puts it in his pocket or something.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the book is out of her hands, she realizes that, like, the book took her over to get itself back together, and, like, maybe she shouldn't have done that.
Well, you think?
Right? So, of course, Jurian and what we call the Bat Boys start picking at each other because that's what happens. Rhys tells him that he looks good for a corpse, and Jurian counters that last time he saw Rhys, he was fucking Amarantha. But that also means that Jurian remembers everything from under the mountain, which just seems like
really
so awful.
Really crappy.
Yeah. I do feel bad for him in this moment. Like, oof. Jurian also asks Mor where Miriam is, and she says that Miriam and Draken drowned in the sea, and he says that she's always been a liar, which is interesting and, like, kind of, I don't know if ironic's the right word, but her power is supposedly truth.
Yeah.
but this person that has known her from 500 years ago says that she's always been a liar. It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But we don't know anything about her power, so we don't know. But like, obviously he knows that Miriam isn't dead, or he would have resurrected her or had the king do it. So Mor admits that Miriam and Draken mated and married the night that he killed Clythia, who was Amarantha's sister. It just seems really quick and unnecessary to mate and marry on the night that Jurian realized he had enough information against their enemies and killed the one that he was sleeping with for it. Just, I don't know. Seems a bit bloodthirsty. That's the wrong word, but
yeah,
I don't know the right word there. Anyway, they moved fast too, so I guess Feyre shouldn't feel bad about moving fast with Rhys.
Nope.
Yeah, I guess there's probably some other similarities between those two relationships that I never really thought about before now.
You mean the Jurian,
Miriam,
Draken,
and Tamlin, Rhys, Feyre.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because both both Jurian and Tamlin are going crazy trying to get their woman back when she's mated to somebody else.
That's true.
Anyway, Rhys grabs Feyre's hand and she touches the cauldron and they try to winnow away. But Jurian laughs and says that he's just there distracting them while the king worked a spell to bind their magic. And they won't leave unless they are allowed to leave or if they're in pieces, which is obviously the threat everybody uses. Jurian asks them if they know what it's like to be awake for 500 years without the ability to eat, drink, sleep. And Feyre kind of realizes the gleam in Jurian's eyes is insanity, which is obviously not very surprising. 500 years, especially as a human, is just way too long to not be able to do anything.
Well, and think too, he's literally been he spent his life fighting against Fae and against their way of life and oppression, and now all of a sudden he is then he was a captive and alive for that long. Mm-hmm. By the Fae. You must, he must hate them with a burning passion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is why is he working with the king now? It's very interesting as well.
Yeah.
The king shows up and he says that he's disappointed that they didn't see this coming. You kind of got to agree with that.
Yeah. It was all just too easy.
Yeah, exactly. Faster than any of them can react, Jurian shoots a bolt through Asriel's chest, and the king says that it's coated in bloodbane. And he can direct the poison with his power. So basically, I don't know about you, I don't know why, but I pictured this to be giant. I know they say an arrow, but I pictured it to be almost as big as my face.
Yeah.
Just through his chest. But anyway, there's also poison on it. So this is not a great time for Asriel.
No.
And yeah, the king can put it directly in his heart and kill him immediately. So he tells them that they all need to go upstairs or he'll kill Az. Feyre knows that she could maybe heal him if she gave him some blood, but she's too far away from him, so she doesn't get a chance. Cassian and Rhys grab Asriel between them and start to haul him upstairs. And the king vanishes the cauldron with a snap of his fingers. And they all walk their way up. When they get up there, they end up in a throne room. And there's just a bunch of people around. So it's very similar to Rhys's throne room and Amarantha's throne room. It's a callback, I'll say.
Yeah.
The king's throne is literally made from human bones, which Feyre could tell by looking at them.
Yeah.
So I guess she is a hunter, so I guess it makes sense. The king says that he's held up his end of the bargain. It's time for them to uphold theirs. And shock, surprise, Lucien and Tamlin come out. And Feyre is very shocked. I don't think the reader was super shocked, but all Feyre can say is just no. And then Rhys asks, what was the cost? And the king explains that he's returning Feyre in exchange for access to Prythian through Tamlin's territory. And he's also going to use Tamlin's territory as a base while they remove the wall. And and he'll also kill the High Lord of the Night Court for Tamlin and Jurian and find out who Rhys's friends are. So like his inner circle. And then the last thing in this whole bargain is the king is going to break the bargain that is between Feyre and Rhys from the first book. And Hybern also says that like Feyre is going to work for him once she is returned to her husband or her husband to be, because she's his property. Yeah, not great. But because Tamlin made a deal with Hybern, now Feyre is also part of it because she is Tamlin's property. So, ideal.
Again, this just cements the fact that Tamlin is an ass.
Yes, completely agree. Lucien looks at Feyre in the group, and he says Tamlin's name, and I kind of feel like it's a warning, but it kind of made me wonder if he can see the mating bond with his eye.
Good point.
So I don't, obviously, we don't know what his eye does, but that's another thing that I'm like super interested in. Feyre, of course, tries to plead with Tamlin, and Tamlin just like disregards everything she's saying and tells her that she wasn't well and she doesn't know better. Like, he does think that Rhys has manipulated her with his powers, but he's also just disregarding everything she says because it's not what he wants to hear. Yeah. So it's very annoying.
Yay for him being a dick.
Yes. Always, apparently. Jurian has his hand on his sword and is looking at Mor like he wants to kill her first, which I don't really know why. And I wonder if there's more to that, or if it's just because she tried to lie to him a little while ago.
Could be.
Unsure. Feyre can tell that Rhys is trying not to move so that no one can scent the mating bond between them, which, like, it's obviously going to get out at some point. So I don't really know what they're trying to prove, or what Rhys is trying to prove. Feyre kind of stops trying to break the hold on her power, and she tries to caress it, and she tells it that she is Fae, but not Fae. And she's wisps of power, and this power can't hold her in. And she also agrees to go with Tamlin if he'll let the rest of them go. But he obviously refuses because they're all monsters, and he wants them all to suffer, I guess.
Yeah.
He tries to grab Feyre, but she's free of the king's power now, and she winnows. And she winnows to Rhys, who then punches Tamlin right in the face.
Love it. Favorite.
He deserves it.
He does deserve it.
Yeah. At that moment, both Tamlin and the king sense the mating bond, but Tamlin just refuses to accept it. And
because he is delusional.
He absolutely is. But he thinks that Rhys did something to make it happen. And I'm like, how?
Yeah.
That's not possible.
Like, they're giving him a lot more credit than, not that he deserves, because, like, I do think Rhys should get, like, something. But, like, I don't know. I don't think it's...
Yeah, you can't fabricate a mating bond.
No. But, like, he's the most powerful high fae in existence. So, like, obviously he can do things that no one else can do.
Yeah. And like you said, Tamlin is just delusional.
Yeah.
A bunch of soldiers start pouring into the room, And Feyre tells Tamlin that he's spineless for selling them out to Hybern and that she'll never go back. And Feyre doesn't really know if her next thoughts are hers or if it's the cauldron, but she keeps thinking, kill him, kill him, kill him. And she goes to unleash her powers at the king to kill the king, but he gets control over them again. And Hybern basically says that since her master, obviously Tamlin, made a bargain with him, like she did too, so she can't go against him. Ugh. So Feyre says to Tamlin, and I took a quote here too, because it's important, but she says to Tamlin, if you bring me from here, from my mate, I will destroy you, I will destroy your court, and I will destroy everything you hold dear. And he just responds that she doesn't know what she's talking about.
I think she does.
Right? I think she just told you exactly what she meant. Like, you can't just say she doesn't know what she's talking about. Such a dismissive asshole.
Yeah. And again, I honestly don't understand the people that want a redemption arc. I don't see why. Why? I want him to die. To me, that's his redemption. Death.
Yeah. Well, maybe that will be his redemption. Yeah, I don't know what I want. I want more story, and I think it could be interesting where she goes with him, but I'll read whatever she writes. You will too.
Yes, of course I will.
The 4 queens walk in then, and they're the mortal queens, and Hybern says it's in Feyre's best interest to behave, and then Feyre's sisters are dragged forward, gagged and bound. And they're just there in their nightgowns, which is awful. Elaine is sobbing, and Nesta is panting like she was just in a huge fight, basically. And the king tells Rhys that he made a big mistake when he went after the book. And the king says he had no need of it and was content to leave it hidden. But when he went to the queens, when Rhys went to the queens, Hybern decided to get Jurian to talk to the queens. And like, I do think that this was a smart plan on the king's part, because he has Jurian working for him, and Jurian is working for him because he wants Miriam back, and obviously he's a bit batshit crazy. But Jurian went to the queens and told them that the night court is awful and Rhys is going to poison them with lies of love and goodness, and the king just wants humans and Fae to be at peace. And like, as a gesture of goodwill, the king guarded the queen's court from prying eyes. So then, of course, when Asriel is trying to get in, it looks bad on the night court, and that makes them look even more like the enemy. So... And also, yeah, Jurian is also like a hero from the original war 500 years ago, so they do trust him because he's human.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it was good play on the king's part.
It definitely was very smart, yeah. Especially, like, the fact that we all know that he just wants to kill them all the humans, and, like, yeah. I don't know, it's genius on him.
So, Feyre is pissed, and she threatens that if they don't let her sisters go, she will slaughter everyone. And the king just kind of points at her violence as like more proof that the night court is bad. And the king tells the queens that he wishes to give life, not slaughter, like the night court. And the queens ask him to prove it. So Feyre kind of realizes like, oh, of course, it's not just about him getting there first and manipulating them into seeing it his way. It's also that the king promised them eternal youth and that they would become Fae. So they're really just a bunch of greedy bitches who only care about themselves.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, man. Would I jump at the chance to become Fae? Probably. But I hope I wouldn't like betray an entire species of people. You know what I mean?
I do. It's a hard philosophical question.
It really is. Like, I want to say, of course, I would not be that greedy bitch that would accept that offer, but I don't know. Would I?
Yeah, if you're living as a human and life is not great and you could, I don't know what I'd do.
It's really, like, I'm being honest with myself here. Like, you want to be that good person, but I don't know if I would.
Yeah. Oh, I'm completely in the same boat. I didn't really think of it before now because you're like, oh, those queens, what a bunch of bitches. But then I'm like, if someone came up tomorrow and said, you can become Faye, I'd say, throw me into that bathtub. Like, immediately. Yeah. I don't know what I would trade for it, but something to think about. Yeah. And I guess another thing too is like, the queens are like, well, it's a losing battle anyway. What are the humans going to be able to do? If we make ourselves Fae, then we'll be fine in the long run. Maybe I don't hate them as much as I thought I did. So, wow. It's really depressing when you look yourself in the mirror. Maybe I'm the villain.
Maybe I'm just a terrible person.
So, that's the thing. The king tells the queens that the transition can be difficult, but a strong-willed individual can survive. And that's why he asked his good friend Ianthe who Feyre would most like with her as a fae.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. I kind of find this whole part unnecessary. Like, I don't know. I guess they needed proof it could be done.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, the king says he also asked the queens like who Feyre would want with her, but they found it to be uncouth to betray Feyre's sisters, which I guess is like good of them, but I'm also like, they left them to die anyway because they live in this territory that's going to get rocked. So like, I don't know if it really
But
matters.
like, also, is it uncouth or like, we all know they didn't like Elaine and Nesta, so like maybe they just didn't want them to have immortality.
You got a point. I didn't think of that. Yeah, interesting. Mm-hmm. Hybern kind of explains that like Ianthe's family has connections with the kingdom of Hybern, and the king held her interest by saying that like Prythian could be a better place with priestesses ruling instead of high lords. And Lucian and Tamlin are just there, like, shocked to their cores. And I just want to slap them both in the face. Like, what did they expect coming here?
They're morons.
Yeah. Feyre does kind of think back, and she told Ianthe everything about her sisters because she thought that, like, Ianthe was her friend. So she knows that, like, she told her that they were strong and, like, gave her all this ammunition, basically. The king then tells everybody, I guess, to brace themselves, and like white hot magic pours out of him, I guess, and Rhys covers Feyre, and Cassian covers Azriel, and Cassian's wings end up getting like shredded. And for one, I don't really know why this happens. Like, I don't know why he like put his power out in the room. I don't know how Rhys didn't get hurt and how Cassian was the only person that got hurt, because none of them have power right now. So I just didn't really understand.
But like,
well, I guess I do know the point of it, but
it could have been intentional, right? Like maybe he meant for Cassian to get hurt and none of the others.
Yeah, that would make some sense. I also think that Cassian needed to be fucked up here so that he couldn't act on his promise from earlier in the book.
Right. Yes. I also feel like too that having the wings out was like he had his wings out. So of course he got hurt. I don't think Rhys had his wings out.
Yeah. But you think his back would get fucked or something. Anyway, but I think the real reason is just that he needed to be subdued. Yeah. For plot reasons. So the power keeps like coming, and Elaine screams a warning to Feyre because Tamlin is taking this opportunity to try to grab her. Like, why? Why are you like this, Tamlin?
Yeah.
So Feyre throws a knife at him, and he has to dive out of the way, which I love.
Woo! Go Feyre.
She's badass.
Yeah.
And Cassian's on the floor with his wings absolutely fucked. And Mor goes to like run to the king to attack him, but Azriel just screams out because the king does still have control over the poison in his body.
Yeah.
So like they need to back down a bit. The king calls Mor a mighty queen, which is interesting. But then he calls her a prize, which is super creepy.
Yeah.
Feyre just like drops down in front of Cassian to try to give him some of her blood. But the king says, put the prettier one in first. And Feyre like immediately like turns around to see what's going on. And guards grab her.
Uh-oh.
And the king says if anyone interferes with them going into the cauldron, that Azriel's going to die. So obviously nobody's going to take that chance. Even Lucien and Tamlin are against putting her sisters in. Like, Tamlin tries to stop the king, but, like, he ends up just being held back by the king's powers. Elaine is panicking and trying to fight back, and Lucien tries to rush towards her, and he's leashed with the king's powers, of course. Feyre pleads with the king that she'll do anything. And she says that, like, she's proof that it can happen to humans. They can turn into fae. But the queens call her a thief and a liar since she conspired with their sister, and her punishment should be the same as their sisters, which is like and they say that this instead is a gift. She's going to get her sister made fae instead of being tortured and murdered, I guess.
So nice of them.
Yes. Elaine is shoved into the cauldron, and Feyre and Nesta are both losing their shit. Mm-hmm. And Nesta is screaming, and Cassian kind of like lunges towards her, but his wings are in tatters, and he's in so much pain that like he can't do anything. But he hears her screams, and there's something in him that's like tries to get to her.
A primal need, we'll say.
Yes. The king then says, behold, and tips the cauldron over, and Elaine comes sprawling out face down on the ground. And Feyre just notes that she looks even more beautiful than before. And like she has pointed ears now. And the queens are all like super pumped. They're like, let's go do this. Yeah. So like she could do it, we can do it. Elaine's like still on the floor with a see-through nightgown now, and like guards are snickering, and Lucien is pissed. And the king does let him go to help her, and he puts his coat around like her shoulders, basically.
Like, bleh, bleh. That's all I can say. Like, this ending really like it bothers me so much. Like I'm. Bleh.
We don't quite get there yet, but Feyre kind of realizes in her head that there are like different kinds of torture, and like this is clearly breaking her. Like she doesn't know if she can survive this.
Like, I'm sorry, I love Feyre, but like her sisters suck. I don't understand. Like, yeah, I get like it's mean. Like they don't want to be turned into fae, and the fact that they are is like really upsetting. But like honestly, they're bitches on their own. Like I just. Why would you want to be with your sister? I guess maybe that's it. She doesn't want them turned into fae, so she doesn't have to deal with them for eternity.
Them for eternity. Yeah. No, Feyre, like I get that you don't love her sisters, but she does still. I don't know if there's a lot of sense to it, but she does. The king asks for the Hellcat to go next, and I honestly love that nickname. Here for
I wish I had a cool nickname like that.
Right?
I don't have a cool nickname like that at all.
No, me neither.
It's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. Again, like Cassian is there, like almost passed out with pain, and like he can't even open his eyes, but he tries to get to Nesta, and he like struggles to try and help her. Important, maybe. Plot. Feyre says it must be in his blood from the promise he made to protect her earlier in the book. And you're like, yeah, sure, Jan.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Nesta kind of puts up a hell of a fight, and like they're finally almost able to push her down, and she gets one hand free, and she points one finger at the King of Hybern and bares her teeth at him in what Feyre calls a curse, a promise, and a damning. And she says the king even has the sense to look unnerved. I'm like, I don't think he would be. I don't know. But also, why is the king turning people that are going to hate him this much and want to kill him?
Yeah. It's not, like, I admit that he's got some skill and some like, strategy. This is not a good one.
No, and especially, like, you're making people immortal that hate you.
Yeah.
So, like, they're going to be around forever. And there's a possibility that they might get powers, too. So, like, this is very dumb.
Yeah. But
anyway.
But I guess he's at the point now where he feels so all-powerful and so, like, untouchable that he feels like it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because technically the entire inner circle is trying to stop him, too, and they did not succeed. So I feel like, you know...
Yeah.
Maybe he just feels that, like, it doesn't matter if they hate him and if he turns them immortal, because they won't be able to touch him anyway.
That's true. Feyre ends up vomiting, and the cauldron is poured out again, and Lucien grabs Elaine to, like, get her out of the way. And the king lets go of his power holding Tamlin, and the fist, like, holding Feyre's power loosens a bit. And Feyre, like, just looking at Nesta, knows that she is different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's different than Elaine, and she's different than Feyre. Like, there's something different about her. And she kind of thinks that the cauldron was forced to give more than it wanted, which is, like, interesting. What does that mean? All Feyre can see on Nesta's face is rage, power, and cunning. And Nesta grabs Elaine from Lucien, but Elaine and Lucien are, like, looking at each other in the eyes, and Lucien says, "She's my mate." And Nesta says,
Lucien doesn't deserve it. Lucien doesn't deserve it.
Nah, I want more of his story too. But Nesta's just like, fuck that, fuck you. No, she's not. Go away. And grabs her. And Feyre just kind of ignores it and is like, I'm not processing this piece of information. I'm just going to try to get out of here safely. Mm-hmm. The king turns to the queens and is like, see, it's safe. And maybe you'll get a handsome fae as a mate too. And, like, the youngest queen steps forward to, like, just jump in the cauldron, I guess, which is, like, wild.
Goals. I mean... I'm married and I'd still be like, yes, okay, handsome baby. Yes, okay.
Yeah, really puts you in a different perspective when you put yourselves in the queen's feet.
Yeah. Queens, yeah.
Shoes is what I meant. Queen's feet.
I'm okay with it. I like it.
Feyre's, like, obviously super pissed now. And Rhys kind of speaks up and asks to make a bargain with Hybern. But Feyre is in her head, and she's like, she cannot stand the idea of Rhys giving away another piece of himself.
Yeah.
And she kind of realizes that, like, she's the one that isn't needed here. Like, she had one task here, she failed it, and she failed the inner circle, and she failed her family. Like, she's the disposable one out of this group. So she comes up with an idea. She falls down to her knees crying and grabbing her hair, and she explodes in, like, a white light, and it's apparently Dawn's magic. And it works to break the hold on their powers. Mm-hmm. And also all of the wards in this castle. She then looks at Tamlin and acts like she just woke up. So she moves towards him and away from Rhys. And she like looks at Rhys and asks what he did to her. And like in her head, she's kind of begging Rhys to play along with her, but the bond is still silent. So they can't actually communicate. But he's a good boy. He plays along. And he asks how she got free. And Mor plays along too. And she asks Rhys what he did to Feyre. And Feyre asks the king to break the bond, the mating bond, the bargain, all of it. And I think Rhys is actually in shock in this moment instead of just like playing along. He's actually like, he just screams out no. And I do think that it's like he really means it.
Well, because like, I guess she's asking him to break it. Like, they don't know the extent of Hybern's powers. Like, what if it actually did break the mating bond? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yes, it is. So Feyre's heart is also breaking right now because she obviously doesn't want to do this either. But she also begs for no more death. She begs for the inner circle to be sent away, and Tamlin agrees to it. He tells Rhys that he doesn't care if she's his mate, and if Rhys thinks he's entitled to her, then like he doesn't care about that. But you're like, he thinks he's entitled to her. So how is that any better? I just hate it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the king does break the bond, and Feyre and Rhys are both in agony, and then the bond snaps, and the bargain tattoo is gone. And the king tells Rhys that they are free to go, and Azriel's poison is gone, but he says he can't help with the wings on the other one. So Cassian.
I will say though, this is very like amenable of the king. Like I know he's being a dick still, but like the fact that Tamlin said, yeah, okay, just let them go. And he's like, okay. And he just like snaps his fingers and lets them, like, to me, like, if you were really, I don't know, I just feel like he should have been a bit more of a bad guy than this.
Yeah, I feel like he should have killed him. He should have. Obviously, I didn't want him to. Obviously, I'm not. But I agree. I'm like,
if he was smart, he would have killed them immediately.
Yes. Yeah. Feyre kind of like silently says goodbye to the inner circle and like looks at each of them, and she is looking at Mor and kind of trying to be like, please take my sisters away with you, because she doesn't want them to go to the spring court. And Mor winnows and grabs Feyre's sisters, and Rhys grabs Cassian and Azriel and winnows them out. And the king is like, what the fuck happened to the wards? So like, maybe he agreed to it, but he would have killed them anyway, and they got out because the wards were down. But why bother like healing the poison, and why bother like breaking the thing? Like, what? I just don't understand like why he was like weirded out about the wards when like he said they were free to go. I guess he thought that they'd walk away and fly.
Maybe.
Lucien actually starts panicking because his mate disappeared, and Feyre isn't panicking, which is kind of funny, but also obviously a red flag.
Yeah,
that Lucien and Tamlin should be able to see. Feyre thanks the king, and the king tells the queens to begin, and like two of the queens fight on their way to the cauldron to like say who should go first, and you're like, oh, but also now I don't know what I do, so I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah.
Jurian comes over to taunt Lucien about Illyrian's having his mate, and Feyre spits at his feet and tells him to go to hell. And like, this is a moment that she notices that Lucien's looking at her because she isn't panicking.
Yeah.
But she says like, we will get her back. And you can tell that Lucien's a bit wary about this all.
Because the way she acted was very like, she was like wide-eyed and like, Tamlin? and like really like, oh my God, I've just woken up. What happened to me? And so like for her to be calm and like, oh, don't worry, we'll get her back is very like confident and very night court, like her night court persona, as opposed to like her damsel in distressiness that she was with Tamlin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. The king then asks where the book is, and he realizes that Rhys took it, and Feyre's just like, that's your problem. Yeah. Like, peace out.
Well, I mean, true story. But also, I thought he said he didn't need the book.
He did, yeah. But I guess because it's now together, he wants it for some reason. I don't know. He probably just doesn't want the Night Court to have it.
Yeah.
We jump over to Rhys's point of view, and Amren's there, and she doesn't have enough power to heal Cassian and Az, so they need a healer to come. And Amren just asks, where is she? And then Mor winnows Feyre's sister somewhere and then comes back. And Mor starts to like try to heal Azriel and takes the arrow out of him. And they both kind of explain to Amren what happened. And they tell her that Feyre wanted the bond broken. And Amren says that like a mating bond can't be broken. And Rhys just agrees with her. Which like, we're all at this point like, holy shit, they broke the mating bond. And Rhys is just like, yeah, no, you're right. It can't be broken. He just like, the king just broke the bargain. He didn't actually break the mating bond. Amren then tells Rhys to go get her. And he just says no. And I know, but I love that Amren is so like, Amren cares so much. I know,
and I love it.
Same. But Rhys says like, Feyre made a promise to destroy him and his court from within.
When? And when did she make this promise?
Like to his face a little while ago. Remember I quoted it?
Oh yeah, so you did. That's true. Yeah. Sorry. I already have I listen, I'm telling you, I refuse to, not that I refuse to accept any of this. I obviously accept it, but I just refuse to think about it.
I get it. But Rhys explains, like, she's a spy on Hybern now. And then he lets drop another bomb. He says, Feyre is the High Lady of the Night Court. So last night, yeah. High ladies don't exist.
They do now.
Yes. So last night they went to see a priestess, and she was sworn in, and she has a tattoo on her right arm to mark it. And she is Rhys's equal now.
Do you think tattoos hurt the way they hurt in real life? Do you think they hurt for them, or do you think it's just like magic, like, oh, there it is?
That's a good question. In Throne of Glass, they hurt more than they do for us, because they do like the different kind of, like, it's not a tattoo gun. It's like not poke and stick, but it's even worse, I think. Stick and poke.
Oh.
What's it called?
Stick and poke.
Yeah, poke and stick. Anyway, it's worse. These ones, they just show up when you make a bargain. Yeah. So I assume that, because like, I think later on Feyre makes a bargain, and then she like is looking over her body to see where the tattoo went. So I don't think they do hurt.
Right. Makes sense.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now we jump back to Feyre's point of view, and she's thinking about swearing her vows with Rhys the night before. And she swore to him and to Velaris and to the Night Court. So she's there. She's ready to be a spy, and she's going to take this court down. She is still playing her part. She tells Tamlin that she saw him today and remembered, and that she started clawing at the power Rhys was holding her with, and like set herself free, basically. And Lucien is still very wary of her, which again also makes me wonder what his eye can see. Like, can his eye see that there is still a bond there, or can his eye see the tattoo on her right hand? Like,
that's what I'm wondering. Like, maybe it can see through glamours.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to know more.
I do, but I still want him to die.
It's fair.
And like, we are we have one more book, and then we have a half book, and then we have another book, and he still has not endeared himself to me. I still don't like him.
Yeah. I just want something from his point of view because I just feel like I don't know anything about him right now.
I'm just annoyed because I feel like all he cares about right now is Tamlin and the Spring Court, and then now it's Elaine and mate. And I just want to be like, dude, just chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
Just work on yourself. Who cares? Like, obviously I can't say who cares about your mate, but like, honestly, work on yourself.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And like, he bothers me so much.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't there are times that he does bother me, but I do very much like gray characters because I just feel like it's more realistic to how life is and like
The only time I've liked him in the entire series so far is when he gave Feyre instructions on how to capture the cereal. That is the only time I like him.
That's fair. So back to Feyre.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. She's acting super in love with Tamlin, but she's really just so full of hate right now. Like, she is so pissed at him, at Ianthe, at this entire court. Like, she is really taking her promise to heart. And Tamlin also agrees to let her help this time. And he says that he won't keep her out of like all of their discussions and stuff. Like, so because she also has all this information that she got when she was with the Night Court. So she knows like she's going to lead him down the wrong path. And Lucien is still just watching her. And she knows that he doesn't believe her like whole charade here, but there's nothing he can do if he ever wants to see his mate again. It's kind of what Feyre's thinking, which I love. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Go girl.
Yeah, honestly. I love that she's such a badass and now she's set to destroy Tamlin from the inside.
Yes. So smart.
Yeah. I'm so sad that we are now I'm like, I don't think anyone understands how sad I am that this is the ending that now we're at the end. Like, I'm devastated here. I'm one sad panda. But like, this still remains my all-time favorite book of the entire world. Like, I can now freely, so my tattoo that I have on my leg is it's the Night Court, like the mountain with the 3 stars on top, and then in a circle, and then there's Feyre's hand with her tattoo all over it, reaching towards it. It is, and then there's like vines and stuff all around it to represent the Spring Court. So like, I'm committed.
Yeah,
to this.
You really are.
I'm really committed. And like, I love that we're doing it in our birthday month, in Christmas month, but like, I'm so upset that it is now over. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I feel like I need like a healing. Like, I need to. I don't know. I just feel like I need time to process. But
yeah,
it's fine.
But I feel like that with a lot of Sarah J Maas's books. Like, I finish them and I'm like, what the fuck did I just put myself through?
But I love that.
But yeah.
I love that you get so emotionally invested into her characters and into her shit. It's so good. And like, I'm so here for it. And I know a lot of people have issues with Rhys and Feyre, have issues with Rhys, have issues with Feyre on their own, separately and together. And I just like, you do you, but I love them.
Yeah.
Like, I love the bait and switch that we had from ACOTAR that was like, you think that she's going to have this happy ending with Tamlin, and then you read ACOMAF, and all of a sudden, all the shit that Tamlin does is like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is one of the things that I love most about this book was that I couldn't really talk about before we finished this book is like, all of the red flags that Tamlin showed in book 1 that you never even realized were issues until book 2.
We did, if you did listen to our our podcast of the first book, ACOTAR, we did talk about some of the red flags. because it's impossible to ignore them on a second, third read. But like when I first read that book, I was like, I hate everybody. Why would I want to continue reading this book? Because I hated Tamlin, and I was like, why should I care? But I also loved that because like it was just such a good glimpse in like into unhealthy relationships, mental health issues.
Yeah.
Like there's so much that can be taken into the real world with this book.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, like I remember my first read through of ACOTAR, I actually loved them as a couple, and I was really happy that they got together. I was really happy that they were going to spend their ever after together. And I said this before that I was shocked to realize that this was a more than singular book, that this was a series, because I was like, what's left? Like, she already beat the bad guy. She's living her happily ever after. But then it is true. Like, when you, after reading book 2 and book 3 and whatever, and then you go back to ACOTAR again, and you realize how problematic Tamlin is. And then you, like, I will never get sick of this book specifically, and how her portrayal of mental health and her portrayal of it is okay to not be okay. And like, and I love that it's a real glimpse. And I know that obviously we're continuing with like, there's a love story, there's a I have to save the world sort of trope, but I love this idea that after you save the world and when you have your happily ever after, that doesn't mean everything is okay.
Yeah.
And I just found that really refreshing to read about, considering like, and I know it's gotten more popular since, like, you know what I mean? Like, it is more of a thing now. People do build that into their books and into their characters. But when this first came out, that was not popular. People did not write about the bad. They only wrote about the good. So like, I don't know. I'm really happy with where this book went. I'm really happy with all the twists that happened. And I just love seeing Feyre and Rhys heal, mostly together, but even on their own, like separately, they, you know, I just love it all.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So on that note, I guess that wraps it up for this week. And I'm going to go cry in a corner that we're done now. So if you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, if you have differing opinions on the Feyre-Rhys relationship, or if you have any book suggestions for us to do, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, and be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at coffeeandcoread.
Yeah. And just a note, like if you do want to reach out to us and talk to us about any of the books, we have read the entire series and we've read her other series. So like there are no spoilers for those. So anything you want to tell us, we are here for it. We're big fans of theories.
Yeah.
So next week we are going to start a new book though. We're going to be doing A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair.
Woo!
So excited for that. It's a Hades Persephone retelling. And we're going to be doing chapters 1 to 5. So make sure to follow along if you're enjoying our chats. And don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.